Okay, so we are live 12/22/2024, and we're going to follow up this live stream. I won't end it, but at the end of the first hour, we are going to be premiering the first hour of yesterday's Bonversation, and that's from the podcast series by John the Bon. It would be my fifth time appearing as a guest, and the second hour will be available to members of John the Bon's website, linked below, and also those of you who are members of the IPS website and Patreon. So the first hour will premiere after this. And and instead of sending you to a different stream, I'm just going to keep the same chat open. We're just going to play it here directly. I think that's the best way to go about it. And hopefully JLB will be here in the chat to join us. So it should be fun. So let's go ahead and take a look at the IPS points of interest. We spent a lot of time yesterday in Discord, and we're trying to make a regular practice out of Discord conversations. It's very useful, and I think it's productive as well. You know, we're sitting around chatting about things in more detail. More people are able to get in on the conversation, and I think we get a lot more, I won't say debate, but I would say comparisons of different viewpoints, which is a little more constructive than mere debates, because it's not an either or win-lose proposition, but it's each side presenting its best. And so it's just an extension of the think tank. And if you want to get in on our Discord, go to ips.monster and you can find the links there. And by the way, I do have a new domain, which I used to own previously. It's infiniteplane.live. And that will take you directly to the current live stream. So infiniteplane.live. Okay, let's see here. We talked about most of these things yesterday. Let's go ahead. Drones. JLB and I, we spoke about the drones, the drone panic, which is something for the history books. They're going to look back on this. This was War of the Worlds. But let's go ahead and get into this. A couple of things. How can we be confident in our assertions things are fake? I have a lot to add to that. Because as what we do, as our perspective expands, many people are going to accuse us of calling everything fake reflexively, which is really projection, because they're calling everything real reflexively. No filtration, no critical analysis. But it's actually far more nuanced than that. And I have a few little axioms and definitions that we can throw in there that clarify our positions. The key distinction being that between a low information believer and the informed non-believer. The non-believer is not a reality denialist. They're someone who's apprised of the facts and they've reached a different conclusion. And that's a big distinction from people who are calling things fake in a very knee-jerk fashion. So we'll get into that and more. McToon addressed the shadows. So there's a lot of, I would say, disagreement. I mean, look, this 24-hour sun thing didn't change a thing. And there are people playing videos like this where you see McToon's shadow getting really long over the course of walking just a few feet. Some suggest this is indicative of it being a stage light and not the sun. And look, at this point, I'm still waiting. I'm still examining. But we would be in error if we pretended like this was a scientific expedition. Everyone here had a bias going into it. McToon is big mad at flat earthers. He's got a bias. Plus, he placed bets on who would win. So the Globe side did have a financial interest in proving their side. I'm not saying that is in favor of the other side of the argument. I'm merely saying that this takes it outside the purview of science, which means you're free to reject this as evidence because it's questionable at that very basic level. But it's also then incumbent upon you to do the observation yourself or get behind it. And so with regard to that, I am somewhat volunteering myself or one of my listeners to go to the South Pole, since nobody accepts what they've presented. Nobody will. Eric Dubé came out, said it was fake. Then you had Russian vids, called it fake. I mean, that's pretty much the consistent thing I keep hearing. It's kind of ironic because they've been trusted for so long. These flat earthers, and their pretty much go-to explanation is to call the other side fake, and now they're receiving the same thing. But anyway, we'll play this clip here because McToon is addressing the claim that he is in some kind of a studio by suggesting that these shadows are indeed consistent with what you would expect.
Real quick, last question. Did you guys think it was weird how fast your guys' shadows were casting? Do you guys have an explanation for that? It seemed like the sun was very low for your guys' shadow to move from 1 degree so far with McToon, you know, that video that everyone's sharing. Do you guys have an explanation for that or thoughts?
Well, the only thing I could say about
the one where I was walking around.
Oh, hang on. Do you mean the one where he's on the phone to Oakley?
Yeah. But well, like really, any of the footage, the shadows are really divergent. Like the same argument that a lot of people make with the moon landing stuff. Shadows seem to really divergent, and when McToon is walking.
Hey, Caleb, you can go to the beach or something on a sunny day and get the same effect.
So it could be a false positive as far as being an indicator of it being fake. But anyway, my point of it is nobody trusts it. So we're going to have to replace it. It's just not going to work. So I'm not specifically volunteering myself, although I'm open to it. If anyone is interested in this, I have looked into it. I've done some preliminary investigation. We had kind of toyed with the idea of beating these guys to the punch, but I think it would be worth a secondary follow-up with a more neutral observer. That way the goalpost can't get moved and this can't be dodged and we can't be accused of reality denialism because we don't immediately go to the other side. And one thing this does not prove, one way or the other, is it does not prove that the moon landing was real, that space travel is real, or that the space station is anything other than a movie set. So it doesn't really add anything to the conversation from my perspective. I still don't know what outer space is, and I still find the idea of low Earth orbit questionable, irrespective of its alleged shape. And as I've said from the beginning of this channel, shape is really not the main question here that we should be focusing upon. It's about whether we're in an open or closed system. And by that, I'm referring primarily to the information system and our worldview and how we get our ideas and opinions. And I'm saying we don't have enough information to be conclusive about it one way or the other. Even if you're a full-fledged mainstream media fundamentalist true believer, you don't have enough information to say you know it. The best you can do is say you've taken a leap of faith, and I'm not taking that leap of faith. So I am secure in my shape agnosticism, and I am very neutral. I could really care less about the model at this moment. All I know is that I need more information, and it's the skeptical approach to suspend judgment in favor of more info. And so again, we'll get into it, but we will find some way of getting that. And I would like to get someone to go to the North Pole, and I believe John the Plumber volunteered. Okay, we're joined by Let's Go, Eddie F., Lando Rock, Frugal, Snowbird, Linda Curtis, Diana South, Let's Go, Armin Ree, Mango Penguins, Frontman 242. Thanks for joining. Deprogram Truther. Yeah, go ahead and call in too, by the way. We have about an hour here before we turn on over to the Bonversation. And we did kind of veer into a subject that, I never really spend too much time on. I kind of avoid it, to be honest. I don't avoid it as in like I am trying to ignore it. However, I think you can only go so far with it. And that's the subject of the occult underpinnings of the various rituals, like the stuff we see in the Super Bowls. In fact, I have a prediction for the next Super Bowl halftime show because there's a consistent ritual, you could say, that it's kind of blatant if you know what you're looking at, but it's so consistent that it's predictable, and I have some ideas, but I want to spend some more time talking about this stuff and trying to get an understanding of, what relevance does it have? Have we identified the religion of the power elite? And is it some kind of paganism, animism, panpsychism? But there is something there. Or at least there's the appearance of it. And I would like to see if there's anything behind those appearances. And as JLB and I were talking, we kind of delved into the subject of magic as opposed to simulation theory, which is something we often stick on. But the idea of magic as defined, rather, by the practicing occultists going back to John Dee. And we spoke of John Dee recently because of the whole black rock at the North Pole thing. That name just comes up. But he's sort of the predecessor to the more modern ritual occultists like Aleister Crowley, etc. But I'm interested in this character for the particular reason that he was an advisor to Mercator, Gerardus Mercator. So you have your side of him that is involved in the globe and its construction and the mapping out of the globe. But on the other hand, he had this private cosmography where he described the world as being a plane with layers, or ethers he called them. And he was of the opinion that it's some kind of, these aren't his words, but this is the description, it would be cybernetic, that one interacts with the world itself and one can command and influence it through these, what he constructed, these rituals, which are basically methods of aligning oneself with nature in what he called physical sympathy. And I've been delving into this. I revisited J.G. Fraser's Golden Bow, Colin Wilson, his works on the occult, Morning of the Magicians. I've been looking back at a lot of this content because I think it might be relevant. I think there's something to it. But it needs to be examined in the context of the think tank because I want to get more takes on it. So I've been specifically studying and looking into the chaos magic paradigm because it turns out that synchromysticism was coined before it was attached to looking at predictive programming, fake news, and the weird synchronicities between entertainment and future psyops. So, for example, people will look at, oh, look, this movie foreshadowed 9/11. It's very eerie. And people looking at it called it synchromysticism, as we often talk about. But the actual phrase existed before that, and it was used by those practicing what they call chaos magic, which, in their terminology, the term meant ascribing mystical significance to the synchronistic experiences. And they operate under the premise that the synchronicity that you're feeling isn't coming from a higher power, but it's actually a result of one's own consciousness and effect on the universe around them. It's a very interesting paradigm. I mean, it sounds crazy, chaos magic, but in their terminology, it's really not. It's kind of like the magic from the New Age stripped of all of its nomenclature and outer trappings, and it just focuses on some fundamentals. And I think it's worth discussing, especially if we're under the impression that this might be some kind of suppressed information for a reason. Perhaps there's something behind it, but we'll see. All right, let's go through my notes for the day. We'll play that JLB after this, so just a little heads up. So again, Mick Toon addressed it, and he suggests that this is what you would expect. It's the person he's speaking to, I think his name is KC Industries. He is suggesting that these shadows aren't what you would expect, and so it kind of goes back and forth. But at this point, people are questioning the integrity of the footage itself, calling it a fake experiment. Some say it's because it's wide angle. I mean, I think it all looks fishy, but that's just because everything is fakeable, and I can be fooled by a whale-sized clownfish on a TikTok video. And I'm someone who's paying attention, and I can be fooled. Okay, phones are open, 505-510-4226, if you have any comments, questions, and then we'll turn it over to the live chat after that. And we might even stay live after the JLB conversation. So it turns out when it comes to this, and we barely got into it, but there's that Christmas market truck attack. And I kind of ignored it because the body count was so low. I had somewhat assumed it was fake. But having looked at it closer, it turns out that this individual behind the attacks, named Talib, was the subject of a BBC documentary. So it's kind of interesting that that would be a reoccurring theme. I mean, the shooter, remember Ryan Routh, the guy who shot it or was going to shoot at Trump at the golf course? He too was the subject of a BBC documentary. So that's strange. It's like we know so much about him. And I believe they said there was something about bombs in the back of his truck. Saudi warnings about market attack were ignored. The fact that it's Christmas is also making it seem like this is some kind of a religiously motivated attack. So I think this is just, I guess, war on terror psyop. But it certainly looks fishy. I did look at the footage. And you did have the regular walkthrough, the anonymous flip phone, blurry footage. You don't really see anything. The closed circuit footage, too blurry. It's like, what's with all this very blurry footage? Nicholas Pitt says, either way, it's not proof of curvature, period. Right. What the real problem with it is it explodes the flat Earth models. And I've been saying from the beginning, it's premature to have a model. Unless you've been somewhere and you didn't tell us. But I think we need to know more, especially because we have already discredited the source that provides us all of the information we get from so-called space. If we can't trust that, then we're starting at ground zero. We have to eliminate certain assumptions, and if we eliminate curve, yep, that makes sense. However, the premature flat Earth model had presupposed that there's a single circular, or rather circulating sun. So it's not orbiting, but it's circulating. And the model cannot account for the darkness in the north and the 24-hour sun in the south. The flat one can't, because the way that light hits a plane versus how light would hit a ball are two completely different effects. And so the fact of the 24-hour sun would, of course, destroy the flat Earth models. And there are people who have what they believe to be explanations and models that can accommodate this. I haven't been able to wrap my head around it yet. I've tried. Like there's this one that Eric Dubay was promoting, the idea of there being some kind of a liquid sky, an actual sun, and then the, quote, apparent sun. And the apparent sun, the one we see, is not the real sun, but it's just the one we see. But the real sun is much higher. And that in this perspective, the 24-hour sun in Antarctica is really just another apparent sun. So that's one possible explanation that they're working with, which, again, I haven't been able to quite wrap my head around it, but I'm looking at it. It's interesting. It kind of presupposes a couple things. This is my problem with it. It presupposes a dome, and it presupposes a liquid sky, which is fine, but we need to confirm these things before you build a model around it. But as a hypothetical, it is an interesting possible explanation. I'm kind of surprised that Moore didn't just jump right into geocentrism. It's like, okay, fine, it's a ball, but it's stationary. I'm surprised that didn't happen. Nicholas Pitt says there are some reflection models that account for what we see. It's good we're able to confirm something should have been done 100 years ago, but until we triangulate the sun from outside... Yeah, this should have been done 5 years ago. This should have been done 8 years ago. This should have been the first thing. And for years, people said, if you go out there, you'll get shot. In fact, there's a song by Mr. Cheswick that JLB is going to play called Mr. Oakley, Where Are the Guns? And it's a song based on McToon, who had to ask him, where are the guns? Eddie Bravo said he would go. Well, no. Alex Jones said he would send Eddie Bravo. But Eddie Bravo said he didn't want to get shot by the Navy. Alex Stein was offered a ticket from Tim Pool, and Stein said, no, I don't want to get shot. This has been the go-to explanation. You can't go because there's a naval presence. And so this kept people away, which is kind of sad if you think about it. It's like, why go? There's just an ice wall. It's like, don't you want to test that premise? So all those who are rejecting Jaren's footage and Wittek gets its footage and McToon's footage, if you're rejecting that, then it will be somewhat, I believe, incumbent on you to donate at least $10 towards the ticket of an IPS member to go to Antarctica. Kiddo Core says, why would anyone accept their claims as fact? It's lazy and boring. Exactly. I don't trust them because it's a clown show. But I would trust myself. I would trust one of you. I think we could make the case on our own, one way or the other. We'll go to the same place and make sure it's not the Sphere in Las Vegas or some kind of virtual movie set like the Mandalorian's set. Diana South said, how about the Awake Souls guys model? Oh yes, they have a model that already years ago they eliminated the presupposition of a rotating sun on an AE map. They already moved past that. Nicholas Pitt says we can go but not freely, that's all. Well, no, it's $30,000. So if we can find 30, no, I don't know how many flat earthers there are, but if you could find, let's just say 3,000 who don't trust Jaren and don't trust Witsit, and if they can each throw in $10 into a crowdfund account, I will certainly send somebody to Antarctica, if not myself. I would prefer to go myself with a camera person, some neutral person I hire. And, you know, 'cause I didn't see any penguins. That was suspect. Did anybody find that to be a little suspicious? I was hoping that Jaren would do a selfie with penguins. Lucid Streams, yeah, it's probably 33K. I actually looked into it, and I found a few places, and I think we could get it done. And this should have the full support of the Gloobers. McToon should say, fine, you're rejecting my info, then you have to get your own. And he should support it. And by supporting it, I mean, if I make this a deal and we decide to make it happen, then they should have to, you know, promote it and perhaps even call in and support what is an honest attempt to get information. And I think there's a reasonable reason to reject their particular expedition, or at least there is, according to many people involved in this topic. Mango Penguin says, I'll go. My family could use a break from me. Okay, you're on the list. I think this is going to be a problem because nobody's going to accept what they presented. They're either going to A, reject it and just continue on like nothing happened, or B, they're going to work on alternative models that account for what has been seen. But it's not going to move anybody. And so there's no progress in this. And I think we need progress. And we also need to maybe even, I guess, energize some kind of public demand for this information, and including not just the South Pole, but there has to be something to the North. There has to be a valid attempt to get information, to go places, and to maybe even debunk the John D map or the Mercator map, the John D letter, where they talk about this 33-mile circumference black stone in the center of it all. Let's check for sure. So, okay, Mango Penguins, you're on my list. So let's just go over a couple of points here. How can we confidently call news fake? This is a very important subject, again, because we're not randomly calling things fake. We're not calling everything fake. We have a few things. And so there's a big if that I wanted to hone in on here. Fake until proven real if there are extraordinary claims. Oh, like drones invading New Jersey. If there are hoax indicators. And hoax indicators can take many different forms. So, for example, predictive or media foreshadowing. A hoax indicator would be grinning crisis actors, or footage that looks kind of phony. A ready-made political agenda. A press conference, Scooby-Doo justice. If you know before the end of one news segment who did it, why, you read their manifesto, and now they're on death row. If they do the whole thing at once, like they rapidly disseminate the story, it's like narrative, and then a couple of facts. That is also somewhat suspicious, like if there's an agenda. But in these instances, we demand a little more information, because these are the things that would move it into the category of an extraordinary claim. But if the news is reporting that the grass is green and the sky is blue, you don't have to assume they're lying to you. A couple of other things. The reason why we don't go with it's real until proven fake is that the media should not be passing its burden of proof onto us. That's illogical, one. And two, it's their job to provide you the information. And what we have consistently revealed here is that the media seems to think that their job is not to inform you, but to conform you. And one other point, too, is that the low information believers, the people who trust the screen and say it's real until proven fake, they don't have enough information to know what they're witnessing to be real. They don't have enough information. So they're categorized as low information believers. Now, low information believers are bad enough, but truthers are more often than not low information disbelievers. If they cannot explain why and the reasons for, it has to be reasonable. If they don't have reasons for why they're calling something fake, then they are a low information disbeliever, and what they're saying can be disregarded. Someone says, I don't believe in panda bears. Yeah, you can disregard that. It's like you're making an argument from like intentional ignorance. So what we aim for here, though, is to be in the category of informed non-believers. And this is generally true, where we tend to know more than the people who believe these stories, but we tend to know more about what we don't believe. And this is consistent in any way. It's how this thing is designed. As Frank Herbert wrote, Dune Messiah, they are trained to believe, not to know. Diana South said, the drones are like Minority Report pre-crime surveillance. It's there for your protection. You know, we were talking about Minority Report last night and about the idea of precognition. And, you know, as a result of our conversations last night and my talk with JLB, I'm going to be producing a limited podcast series on this subject. I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of anecdotes, and I've done a lot of research on the matter. A lot of the research in the form of, personal investigation, for example, joining weird cults, and when I say weird cults, I mean like the I Am Temple, Scientology, Freemasonry, Thelema, and my experiences with these, I think, are things that I avoid talking about, or maybe I don't have the context for it. But I think maybe if I put it all into a single context, I can just get it all out there, and then maybe we can expand on it if people are interested. So what I'm going to do is record. I have a plan for 8 separate podcasts in the series that are going to go through different facets of this area of research that is generally termed the occult. But I think I can shed some light on certain things, and specifically as it relates to the area where media and magic seem to intersect. Because I think this conversation or this area of research has been dominated by one explanation, which leans very heavily toward simulation theory. It's leaned heavily towards one explanation that somewhat accounts for it. But I think we can get into the nomenclature, the symbolism itself, and the origins of these things. Because my research in this entire area began when I looked at NASA, not as a space agency, but as an instance of, or an iteration of, an older worldview, that we're looking at syncretism, that the rocket is in fact emblematic of the Earth God. It is in fact an obelisk first, rocket second, that its primary purpose is religious pageantry. And I know that's going to sound insane to people who don't know that NASA is a religion. It's a mystery school. It's a religion. I would call it NASAtology. And it is the one world religion. You know, conspiracy theorists for decades have been warning that there's going to be this religion and everybody's going to join it. They're like, no, I won't fall for that. It's like, no, you already did. You were indoctrinated into it. Outer space is your religion. That is your heaven. Kiddo says, they get so angry and you challenge their assumptions, it's not worth trying to convince normies of anything. Yeah, as a rule, and this is our strategy here, the IPS think tank strategy is, we have Normieville, we leave them out of it. We just observe. Woketown, I don't even go there. There's no reason to. They're locked in, and they're specifically locked in on the side of big government and big media. They're not salvageable, nor do they want to be. But Trutherville is where you will find the reachables. The people in Trutherville are already rejecting the dominant paradigm to some extent, and they're falling for alternative lies. Every red pill contains an alt lie. So you got mainstream lies and alt lies. I mean, truthers are generally liars. And if you don't believe me, you just got to look at X. They don't care if they get corrected. They don't care if they're spreading a panic about drones that don't even exist, or motorcycle gangs fighting Venezuelan gangs. Like, they make up stuff. They lie. They fall for everything. They're gullible. They're afraid of cirrus clouds. They don't do anything about these things but gripe. So Trutherville, it's a disaster. But the people there have good intentions. They're heading in the right direction. So what we can do is reach them and sort of form a bridge to the off-world stage perspective. Like, hey, look, you're correct in rejecting mainstream lies, but you are in error when you accept alternative media lies, because it's the same it's the same pharmaceutical company producing the red pills and the blue pills. You have to be outside of their entire box, and the only way to get there is to reject the essential premise that mainstream presents, that the reporters are objective, and or rather the reportage is mostly objective. There's some political bias, but they're reporting on reality. And that's the basis that both sides accept. The conspiracy theorists think, okay, well, there's more to the story. Like, yes, Trump got shot at, but there was a second shooter. So the truther version is a little more complex, a few more facts or a few more narratives added onto it. However, it's deeper into the matrix because it starts with the base assumption that Trump was really shot at. We take what I call the subtractive view. The subtractive view means we're suspending judgment and eliminating that which can't be verified until we find something that would possibly substantiate it, and generally we do not. Joined by Here I Am, says the occult, the true reality of sky and the earth. Some reason why I think the character John Dee is relevant, because of his role in the voyages of exploration, but also his role in instituting the Gregorian calendar, and then his significance in the occult world, which is obviously prevalent throughout mass media and entertainment. It just pervades everything. And I do have a lot to say about that, about the merger of Hollywood and the occult. Like, basically, there's a direct pipeline here between the emergence of, like, modern Satanism, modern left-hand path religions, and Hollywood movies. And I have direct quotes from individuals such as Kenneth Anger about the role of Hollywood in presenting the pageantry for the new world or the new age's religion. And then you merge that. So you can merge Hollywood, Satanism, and NASA. Hollywood, Satanism, and the space program. These things are all part of this paradigm itself at its very fundamental level. And this is what I'm going to attempt to explain, at least based on my own research, what I think we're looking at. Because this is where the relevance of the subject of magic fits into the picture. Remember, we talk about occasionally this Jack Parsons character, who was a friend of Crowley, the American counterpart to Crowley, head of the OTO here, and yet he was also a central figure at the beginning of the space program. And the significance here is that he wasn't an outlier, or he wasn't an anomaly, but rather what he was a part of, I believe, was the merging of science fiction and this older paradigm. That's why I say NASA is a new iteration of something old. It's the old world order, but they dressed it up like sci-fi. Chris's wife says, my conspiracy theorist coworker has a lot of cognitive dissonance. I would gently introduce my belief of disbelief before evidence. Right. How would I approach that? So in my view, it's this. A lot of the people who are stuck in Trutherville are followers, meaning they've trusted certain figures, certain influencers. For example, let's say they're stuck in Alex Jonestown, or they're stuck on Q Street. That's because they're trusting people, and they're part of a community. Those individuals will be more reachable as the parallel media grows, and we have a larger body of content creators, and there's a bigger crowd, because a lot of people are definitely motivated by groupthink to some extent, even, quote, truthers. So my idea here is, let's not try to reach out to people who aren't looking, who aren't seeking. There's two categories. You got seekers and believers. Believers can be ignored. Let's just get all the seekers, those who've already figured things out, those who've already stepped onto this side of the screen, who have implemented skepticism at media on the level we have. Let's get them first. And once we've aggregated this separate demographic, we've quarantined it. We don't bring in any conspiracy subcultures that are still gullible and still falling for various orthodoxies. Once we have that, then I think we'll be in a position to be more convincing to people who are stuck. Instagram, TikTok truthers, these individuals are seeing psyops. They're seeing fake trees. Like, oh, look, another fake tree, another fake tree. What they don't see is the off-world stage perspective that the entire forest is fake, that we are clear-cutting the forest of information. That's what the Daily Beast said about us. They said that the IPS is shitposting into oblivion and clear-cutting a forest of information. And I'm like, well, that's kind of true, because it turns out that all the trees are fake. So truthers have a very myopic view, and it's not including the fact of the psi war. It's like, oh, look, anomalous fake things here and there. It's like, no, that's how they trick you. They get you running laps, running, circles, like the Sandy Hook people running around the firehouse. They have you running around a particular psyop and never connecting the dots. So it's like they have a few little things they've noticed here and there, but they don't see, hey, it's all coming from the same place, the psyop entertainment complex. The military-industrial complex is not a thing. That's the exoteric, that's the distraction, that's the big red herring. The truth is that the psyop entertainment complex is in control. It is mind war. Okay, let's see. We talked about Nick Fuentes and his near assassination and how he's the leader of America First. And I want to point out that when I watched the Madness on Netflix, the number one show on Netflix, it foreshadowed the CEO killing by Luigi. And I have a few things about this Luigi character here bookmarked, by the way. But it also had the leader of the Forge, like basically the movie equivalent of Nick Fuentes, gets killed. And I said this movie is going to contain a lot of relevance to what's about to happen on the world stage. So it's highly significant that the leader of America First has an assassination attempt, that some psycho goes to his place and tries to kill him, because this is right out of the movie. So the next thing we should expect is more of the same. And in fact, they even kill Elon Musk in the movie. The killers have 3D printed guns like Luigi. It's not hard to see the parallels. And some could say you're cherry picking, Texas sharpshooter fallacy. I would say, no, that's not true when it's the current number one Netflix show consistently foreshadowing tomorrow's news. And we've established this as a pattern. This is one reason why I don't think it's necessary to debate alternative explanations for what we're seeing. We don't need to debate the synchromistic premise, because in the end, as time goes on, the facts will determine who is correct. And one of us is correct. Either we're looking at a very sophisticated propaganda machine that integrates entertainment into the news, uses it as a form of conditioning people for what is about to be faked, or there's some other explanation for it. But so far, the best competing explanation has fallen short because no one has evidence of any kind of simulation that they can point to. That's a side topic in a way, but what I want to really emphasize here is that our media analysis rules out, from the very get-go, we rule out any sort of divine source for the eerie coincidences we see in the news. And the term eerie is often used by media when they point out these things, when they reference their own coincidences. And these coincidences, these mergings between real and fake are, of course, by design. There's a reason why Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco the day after Netflix releases Waco American Apocalypse. Did Netflix know that Trump was going to kick off his campaign in Waco? These are questions that you'd have to ask. And one of the things that is significant about it, of course, is Waco's connection to Dave Koresh and the Branch Davidian compound burning on 4/19. And what happened on 4/19? Trump is outside of a courthouse, and this individual sets himself on fire right outside. So we have these allusions to the Waco incident off and on. It's very consistent. In fact, Timothy McVeigh, for example, he was radicalized at Waco. He was executed 6/11/2001 at the age of 33. And then Trump was shot at 6:11 p.m. and 33 seconds. And the 6:11 Trump connections, the Waco connections, these are all part of this, what I call meta script, this bigger story that shows that there is a deliberate integration between fake news and the media foreshadowing, the entertainment. And it's not just in the movies, it's in the books, it's in the games. So what I point out here is that what we're looking at to demystify it is the deliberate use of fictional universes to bolster the news. So for example, the Batman universe. We have so many examples of this strange or eerie overlap between the Batman movies and themes and characters and specific scenes and what happens on the world stage. A good example of this, Batman Caped Crusader. This was on Amazon. Season finale, there's a Trump-esque character, Rupert Thorne, who has a boomerang thrown at him by Batman, and it cuts his right ear. It sticks in the chair. And he bleeds. So his right ear. And then this is said to him, this is just a warning. And then next season, apparently, it's going to continue. So now Trump is in season 2, his second term. So you would look at that, or I'd look at this as foreshadowing, but also concurrent programming, because that episode was streaming at the same time that Trump had his ear wound. And I have personally 12 or 13 different examples of the Trump head wound scenario being foreshadowed in movies. Even in Machete, for example, we often point out that the senator, very Trump-like, giving an anti-immigrant speech, gets shot at. What I fail to mention sometimes is that the shooter is shot through the ear and his ear explodes in a big bloody mess right after. So years before the Trump event, people watching this movie saw the Trump-esque character getting shot at during an identical speech and then the exploding ear thing. But we have so many overlapping examples of this that it's safe to say we're looking at something systemic, that it's structural, that it's intrinsic to what media is today, that these things aren't separate, that there is no meaningful distinction between entertainment and news. That is a smaller claim and more supportable than suggesting that there's some kind of a higher power or an AI responsible for all these integrations. And we've arrived at this because we've studied it long enough. Back when there were just a few anomalies, maybe you could explain it away as weird coincidences and synchronicities. But now it's gone from synchronicities to it's systemic. It's just like commercials. It's just part of what we experience when we observe media. But instead of overt commercials, this is like they live. These are all subliminal. These are in the subtext. And since they're not openly as commercials, and it's not even, they have somewhat plausible deniability. It's like, yeah, this is propaganda in primetime TV programming. But it's not just propaganda to influence your opinions politically, left or right. This is propaganda in the sense that it's priming your mind, post-hypnotic suggestions. It's, in a sense, you're doing mental drills for what they're about to fake. One of the key components in our analysis here is that the media foreshadowing and build-up towards fake events is a form of softening or conditioning the mind, but it's also the case that these things are always only fake. We have never had an instance where a real event is foreshadowed by eerie media coincidences. It's always the case that it's fake. So that rules out the notion that there's anything prophetic about it, or that they have to tell us because they're doing a bad thing, and according to some, the quote revelation of the method is what we're seeing. There are some who say that by telling us about the atrocities in advance, they get our consent, which is a silly proposition, but a lot of people say that. It's a truth or orthodoxy. And we've exploded that explanation. It no longer suffices. But let's get back to my notes here. I had a few things. Apparently there's a Luigi lookalike contest in Brazil. And then on Saturday Night Live, they showed Luigi, and I think the audience cheered for him. I stand by my earlier statement that the left doesn't need pose, that the left wing doesn't need parodies of extremism, because they are all on the same plane. They all have a uniform opinion. And I think it's safe to say that people on the far left have no problem with CEOs being murdered, shot in the back. So here's an example. This is SNL, and they have an update with Luigi, and listen to the audience.
Luigi Mangione dropped. Yeah.
Now, if you haven't seen it yet, Luigi's perp walk was something right out of the movies. People have compared it to the Joker. He's surrounded by these cops. The mayor's there. He's got his orange on. He's got a fresh haircut. I think they shaved his unibrow. And he's posing for the cameras. Some remarked that he seemed to be emphasizing his own jawline. So here he is being cheered on SNL.
Yeah, definitely woo. You're wooing for justice, right?
And they really are. And so that's not fake laughter. Some people said, there's no way people are going to cheer for this guy. It's got to be bots. I'm like, I'm sorry, but no. Diana South says, maybe autohoaxology should be on your must-read for junior high. No, I would never attempt to reach anybody still in school or even still in college, to be honest. I don't believe in proselytizing, but I think it's unfair and it would be disastrous. And who am I to tell other people how to raise their kids? I kind of think that media skepticism would conflict with their programming. And nobody escapes the programming. You have to go through it. You can deprogram volitionally later, but no, I don't imagine this ever being something that I would try to reach people who are still in their initial state of programming and indoctrination. In fact, I'm entirely against it for a few reasons, but in principle, I'm against it. But I also think it's impractical. The amount of effort it would take, I mean, that's like Scientology level cultism, to try to take someone off the street and totally convert how they see things. I'm more interested in people who have taken the, I guess, active role of being a critical thinker with regard to media, but also who are able to include in their assessment the fact that media lies. And a lot of people aren't ready for that. Nicotrauma says, I see a united front for everyone I follow. That Luigi event was fake. There is no counter narrative. Interesting. Look, I knew people who were rooting for the Trump assassin. Like, basically, I know people who want Trump dead. I mean, I just listen to people, normies. And I'm saying, I hear normies. I heard this expression last year, where's Lee Harvey Oswald when you need him? I don't know anybody who's cheered Luigi personally, but I've seen it quite a bit, and I know some people who I'm pretty sure would. And I just keep the stuff in mind. I don't try to correct people. If somebody I know is cheering an assassin, then I just know what that person is like on some level, that you're dealing with, I don't know what you would call it, a moral relativist. I mean, but like, I feel this way towards certain people. Like, I believe in wood chippers as a solution to certain problems, or millstones. It's like burning at the stake, torn apart by wild dogs. Like, there are some people who I think deserve what the CEO got. I don't think the CEO deserved it. Diana said the Beatles had fake screaming girls who would faint on cue. Screaming Luigi's. I don't think, again, I don't think you need to coax lefties. I mean, there are people on the streets in Brazil having a Luigi lookalike contest. We saw it in New York. In fact, I was listening to a podcast the other day, a Daily Beast podcast. I think the podcaster's name is Danielle Moody. And she said F the New York Times. She was mad at the New York Times because they won't put his picture. They stopped putting his picture up. I have to follow up on what she said. I'm just going to see if I can find an article. That they didn't want to put his photo up because he was being portrayed as some kind of a hero. Here it is. And she was mad that they're doing this. Like, she was mad that Luigi isn't going to be put on the cover of Rolling Stones. New York Times reportedly sought to dial back on Luigi Mangione's image. The New York Times doesn't want you to see the shooter's face. Times management directs staff to dial back on Luigi headshots. So here we go. New York Times memo. Stop showing Luigi's face. New York Times, Luigi Mangione and the danger of a handsome criminal. But the podcaster I was listening to, because I listen left, I listen right, and she was lamenting this fact. She actually said, F the New York Times. And I'm pretty sure that liberals, lefties, you'd see in universities that they would cut the picture out and they would put it on the wall. I mean, they have turned this person into a hero. He's like Robin Hood. He's like the Joker. And we have seen many examples of the overlapping of the Joker character and this particular actor, this particular LARPer. And look, I don't think that he is a patsy. I would say that he is a live action role player. But we've been looking at the various Joker connections, and one of the strongest ones that I have found, and I have an article about it called, Is the CEO Shooter the Joker? And here it is. There's an image of him in a cab, looks just like the Joker. The way they characterized and portrayed him, but here it is. New Yorkers celebrate the assassination with a look-alike contest. So they're wearing his costume. And then you have this. Clown vigilante, kill the rich, a new movement. So in the Joker movie, he kills some rich guys. That makes him a hero. He kills Robert De Niro, which symbolically means he killed Trump, because Trump is the character in Machete, played by De Niro. They make these connections. The Joker is based on a De Niro character who inspired the Reagan shooter. Travis Bickle inspired the Reagan shooter. So if you follow Travis Bickle and Joker, the Reagan shooting, the Trump shooting, Trump and De Niro, as represented in the movies as a foreshadowing. When you look at this, it's a pretty straight narrative here. And what you're seeing is this comparison where the kill the rich narrative, the righteous people's or class warrior taking out one of the elite, kicking off a movement, and they dress like him. Well, in the movie, they all dress like the Joker. In real life, they all dress like Luigi. And I think you could even correlate a few other things with the Luigi symbolism, the green, and the Joker's green hair. There's quite a lot of overlap here, all by design. The Joker, the Riddler, the mentally ill victim of society fighting back. Not a coincidence that Dave Franco was trending because he looks like the shooter. And Dave Franco had previously portrayed the Riddler. Lucid Stream says, I think the Luigi hero is a representation fabricated by the media, not actually real. Well, I would say he's real. He breathes. He occupies a cell. I would say he's 100% real. However, I would also argue that he is playing a role. And this is where we have to be very clear. When I say something's fake, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying that it's essentially an act. A LARP is a great way of thinking about it. I would say that Thomas Crooks is a LARP. And Thomas Crooks, again, the shooter, the Trump shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, was referred to as an enigma by the media, or Enigma, which is Riddler's name. Very similar to the Joker. And if you look, the Riddler looks exactly like Thomas Crook. And then it goes further because if you recall, the Riddler sings Ave Maria. Batman pounds on the glass and said, "What did you do?" And then at the Trump memorial, or at the moment of silence in Butler, where Trump said, moment of silence, it was 6:11. At that exact moment, they brought out a male singer who sang the exact same song. We have so many overlaps. It's evidence here of a fictional universe overlaying the MSM fictional universe. And again, the idea of a fictional universe is an internally consistent world used as a staging ground for various stories, like the Marvel Universe. And you could say, and I do, that the mainstream media presents us with the fictional universe. And I can make this case because if we can agree that a percentage of the fake news goes into the history and never gets corrected, and this would include every psyop. So we can already say that our history is somewhat fictional. It's based on reality, but it contains a lot of fiction. We can say the same about the Marvel Universe. It's based on reality, but contains fiction. Now, what they do is they overlap the two. These concepts are analogous. So in the mainstream, their reportage is based on everything they reported in the past being true, being real, even if they're reporting on things that don't really exist. So we live in a world augmented by various constructs. One of the biggest constructs is the nuke, this idea of the mutually assured destruction, this ultimate weapon. Well, that changed the game. That put us into an end times. We've been functionally in a fictional universe since the advent of these weapons of mass destruction that don't exist. That's one of the biggest game changers out there. And I referenced Frank Herbert's quote earlier, the one about how they're not mad, they're trained to believe, not to know. We live in a world of believers, and this is all by design. We're trained to be believers, not knowers, because, and the second part of the quote is, belief can be manipulated. Only knowledge is dangerous. In other words, only knowledge is a threat to the system. Only knowledge can in any way empower people, but the belief systems in no way, like there's no truther out there that in any way is a, quote, threat to the system. Truthers are all controlled opposition. They hate to hear it. You'd hate to hear that the entire anti-vax movement was controlled opposition. I mean, you don't want to hear that you may have spent years part of a controlled opposition movement. And that is largely what happened. The truther movement, the truthers have been hijacked for the purposes of carrying the alternate view, which is used to sabotage them as well. It's a big foot bullet. I call them propaganda mules. Okay, so in about 5 minutes, by the way, we're going to be playing the hour 1 of the John LeBon Bonversation, episode number 61. And this episode is my 5th appearance. So I have it here queued, and we'll be playing this first hour. And then the second hour is available for IPS members and members of John LeBon's site. I just wanted to give people time to show up. So in about 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to start that. So far, just to give you an idea, we have in the video channels, including TikTok, I don't have a full count there. Let me open up a secondary YouTube channel. But right now we're at about 150 and then another 50 on the audio streams. But I think we can increase that. So in the next few minutes, I think John LeBon's going to send out a promo. Okay, let's continue. I had a couple other clips I wanted to play. This is a clip that just emerged. This is from 1963. And it shows Secret Service agents being instructed to stand down just before JFK was shot. And you do see a Secret Service agent stop and put his arms out like what? Like he's asking a question. And then he walks away. Then the shooting happens. Or at least that's what we're told. We don't know. I mean, in all likelihood, there were multiple shots. My opinion here now, based on my research and the best that I've seen, is that you're looking at a insert. Like when you look at the Zapruder film, it's likely a dummy, a Muppet with a squib in the head, and Jackie pulls the wire to activate the squib to cause the head to explode, and then she runs across the back of the car. And it's well known that Jackie Kennedy, it's known now thanks to Vanity Fair, she had an interest in making movies. And 2 months before the assassination, JFK and Jackie made a home movie where he gets killed. They even involved the Secret Service in this. and a lot of Heinz 57 ketchup. This was September 22nd, 1963. There's a movie that hasn't been released, but there's some still shots. And some of the shots have been compared to the Zapruder film, which is kind of strange. There's a link in the chat if you want to sign up for the newsletter. And also to get part 2. So we'll be listening to part 1 shortly. So here's a clip from a movie called The Homestead. It just came out, I think, last night. Haven't seen it yet. But it's about a nuke that hits Los Angeles and then what happens next.
Over to charge the vehicle.
What are we gonna do? I don't know.
Low battery. Please safely pull over to charge the vehicle.
It's like another Leave the World Behind, but it's called The Homestead. So it has to do with preppers, and so I mean, I guess you put this in the category of Civil War, Leave the World Behind. But my interest in this is whenever something like this is mainstreamed, it means that they're putting a lot of images and ideas and concepts into the, I mean, I say collective psyche loosely. I just mean that they want to saturate our mental space, and also cyberspace with these ideas in preparation for activating some psyop, where now that's part of your frame of reference. A good example of this is how when 9/11 happened, a lot of people referenced the movie Independence Day. And that's interesting to me because, of course, you know, had buildings falling, aliens attacking, get behind the president. But the director, Roland Emmerich, directed Moonfall. And Moonfall was just full of nothing but stuff falling from the sky, space junk. That was a huge theme throughout the movie. And right now we're at that stage. In fact, I think a big piece of Chinese space junk was recorded in multiple places. Here it is. Thousands of witnesses in the United States see a fireball in the sky. It looks like space debris. Someone here says they're bombing us.
Holy fuck, dude, they're bombing us. You fuck.
What is that?
Dude, there's another one. 2, 3, 4.
See, this is what I would consider to be a hyperstition. They invented the idea of space junk, and now they can just provide the special effects. So this has been determined that to be Chinese space junk. It says people across Kansas, Arkansas, Tennessee, Missouri, Louisiana got treated to maybe a satellite, a fiery spectacle. Breaking, Chinese imaging satellite enters Earth's atmosphere over New Orleans. So that's from China. Interestingly, too, the movie that recently came out, Megalopolis, has a scene where a Russian satellite falls and hits New York. And when the movie was in the film festivals, a Russian satellite exploded, and they had to lock down the ISS. Now, after the movie came out, the director, Francis Ford Coppola, said, the movie's about the fall of Rome, and it has the Make Rome Great Again characters. So the movie is about the fall of Rome. And he said it's about what's about to happen. So there's some foreshadowing. But we already saw the image of the space junk falling very prominently. In fact, if I bring up the movie Megalopolis, you'll see it opens up with what we just saw. And there's another movie out right now, Gladiator 2, that also has the same theme of the fall of Rome. So here's a Megalopolis trailer.
One filmmaker has always been ahead.
I'm just going to try to get to the part where it shows you the space junk falling. This movie is, I'm not going to say it's good, but it's a great example of media foreshadowing, setting the stage for future fake events. You know, and there's different terms people use for it. Media foreshadowing works, but we're talking about putting things into your frame of reference. So as I mentioned, people were quick to compare 9/11 to Independence Day. They had a frame of reference. And I think these movies are done in order to channel the different interpretations into predictable paths. In that movie, it was, we're being attacked by aliens. Get behind the president. Very simple overall theme there. It happened on 9/11. We got attacked by illegal aliens or invaders. And then Bush is then suddenly the person to get us through it. Thank you very much. Appreciate the support there. Echo Charlie, IPS thanks you for the support and participation. She says, do you want to change your opinion about the LED screen in Antarctica? Have a hot cocoa on me. Yeah, I am 100% behind accepting new evidence. I will not reject new evidence. However, there has been enough to suggest that the final experiment's not going to be accepted by any of the people who are involved or interested, except for those who are already on the glooper side. And we're going to have to do something about that. Diana Southard, thank you for bringing the wrenches. Enslaved by Truth, Philip, Felix, Linda Curtis. There were no planes. Kiddo Core, Reverse History, El Nofo, Queen Diamond B. Oliver, For the Glory of Christ. Princess Buttercup, Nick Fingar have all received the blue wrench. Jimbo Akimbo, J5, Rome, Jungle Jim, McDirty Works, Psyops Matter, Me and My Drone, Sleepy Random also have received the blue wrench. We're looking to see if Goldfinch gets doxxed. Donna says Merry Christmas. Hey, I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much. And I am in the process of formatting a members only type of situation as far as wrenches go. You get access to members content. And as I alluded to earlier, I have plans to create a limited series podcast, a separate podcast, likely 8 to 10 episodes. I'm going to release it all at once. And it's going to be a deep dive, kind of a retrospective on all of my research into various topics that somewhat inform my worldview. And I think I might have some to add to the discussion. It's been a blind spot, and I think it's important to know, not to just categorically say all this information is bad or evil. Let's just be ignorant about it. I think it's more important to understand the opposition or understand the other side. Yes, Children of a Lesser Shed Dog says Trump hijacked and whitewashed the term fake news in hopes of diluting auto-hoaxing. The Q movement, in my opinion, one of its main purposes was to get all of the conspiracy theorists and politicize them. Because it wasn't political. People said politics is fake, it's all deception. There was this growing body of people who were figuring out that it was fake for the most part, any big event, and that if you called it fake first, you could compete with the mainstream and get a lot of hits, and you could build an audience around your discernment. Well, they destroyed that after Vegas, and the term fake news became diluted with Trump. And the Q movement took all these, what would have been auto-hoaxers and media skeptics, and turned them in, it hooked them on the Q pipe. And look what happened. They got totally politicized. They had this hope that, hey, the conspiracies are real, the worst ones are real, but Trump's going to save us. I mean, it's a good pitch, I think it was a good marketing tactic, and it worked. The good news is the conspiracies aren't real, so we don't need to be saved from them. Save the children. Nobody says that anymore. I thought you people were all about saving the children. Someone said to me, you don't believe Q? Don't you want to save the children? And I'm like, what children? And now it's 2024. Those children by now have already grown up, and they're in the custody of Democrats. So in all likelihood, they voted for Kamala Harris. Like, you lost them a long time ago, if they even existed. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and, yes, Kiddo Core says information is neutral. You decide what to do with it. Yeah, as a general rule here, what I say is you just have to suspend judgment. Like, you're not under the obligation to believe a headline. You can see the headline, acknowledge this is what people believe, but you can wait a couple of days. No one's forcing you to believe right away. And if you believe right away, you're susceptible to psyops. The only way to inoculate yourself is to put that buffer of time. You got to socially distance yourself from the screen. And the drone panic is a good example of what happens when people don't skeptically and critically analyze what they're consuming. And what's more, people even said that they had been given some kind of a sickness from the drones. And I believe them. but I would say that it's a psychosomatic effect, that we're looking at a mind virus taking a person's immune system, probably through stress, by surprise, and leaving them susceptible to actual sickness. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and jump on to the John the Bond site here. Let me go ahead and post. I think I put a link below, actually. So if you want to consider joining, you'll get your hour 2 there. If you're already a subscriber or a member at IPS, you will also get that. But here is a link. If you join John the Bond's channel, you get a lot of content, because this is episode 61. And this is my 5th appearance. So this is a lot of content, many, many hours of listening. It's a different think tank than ours, but it's a think tank nonetheless. And there's just so much to go through here, coming from the perspective of just abject skepticism. We think more alike than not, and our conversation kind of gets into these areas where we have maybe a fundamental disagreement about causes, but we're in the process of testing our own model, expanding it, and getting more information. And again, we're all in the same track. So let me go ahead and put this link below. Again, you can join if you want. Just click that link and you get hour 2. But we're going to play hour 1 here now. So there's about 160 in video live listeners, and that doesn't account for all the platforms, including the audio, so we're probably closer to 200. Nathan Mulliken says, predictive programming assumes the world is logical. Synchro says, do you have to enter your billing info on Google to get a membership? I don't know. Although you can join his Patreon and my Patreon. They have free, where you do get some content and live stream notifications. And if you join my newsletter free, at least you get the notifications and archives. You have options to support if you choose. But I want to say again, thanks to everyone here for supporting this channel, and of course John the Bond's channel, because we are building a parallel media. This is a very separate group of people than those that populate the alternative media and the mainstream for sure. But we are creating a separate demographic, a third branch of media. You got main, alt, and this parallel media needs to grow as a space. So we have to be mutually supportive of all content creators in this realm. So let me go ahead and play Bonversations episode 61, and I'll be in the chat. I'll be very active in the chat, so I'll see you there, and thanks for listening. And this is Bonversations episode 61 with Tim Osman.
You're about to listen to another Bonversation. Bonversations feature the most interesting and insightful people in the act realm and beyond. Every episode is made possible by people like you who value and support independent media. Now here's your host, JLB.
It wasn't a tent, it was this magnificent thing.
Yes, Bonversations number 61. We've got a very special guest today. Nobody has been on this show 4 times. Apart from this guy, this is now his appearance number 5. And today we're talking about the final experiment. These people went to Antarctica. Or did they? Because there are some people doing some final experiment denials. We'll talk about that. This Luigi story with the numbers and with McDonald's and with all these things we'll talk about. Is it predictive programming? Is it just coincidence? What do the sync people have to say? What do I have to say? What does Tim Osman have to say? We'll talk about that. And also predictions for 2025. Our guest today is on the record saying that he thinks there might be a nuclear event. I hope he's wrong, folks, because 3/11 wasn't that long ago. I'm enjoying the world being back to relative normal. I hope he's wrong about his predictions, but he does have a track record of sometimes being right. Let's hope he's wrong this time. We'll talk about all that and so much more. But first, Tim Osman, great to have you back on the Bonversations.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is the 5th time. Amazing. Okay, I was trying to count, and the Bonversations are always an enjoyable listen, and I've been really looking forward to this one because it seems like we've had a rapid succession of psyops that I think are worth discussing, from the Luigi thing to the drone panic, which is worth discussing in and of itself. That's going to be something for the history books, because we witnessed something collectively that I would consider to be essentially a panic. And then I think the reaction to the final experiment is something that we should really discuss. Not just the final experiment itself, but the reaction to it, and what the right reaction should be. Because I really think that this is a question that's to be answered with science, with investigation, with a model that's testable. I don't think that leaning on biblical models is a valid way to move forward with this. And I think that this experiment should be a wake-up call to a lot of people in terms of what kind of claims we make and what they rest on. And it's going to bring out a lot of dogma. And I think there's ways to approach this without clinging to dogma and sacrificing your intellectual integrity. And then I do have something of a prediction for 2025, and I have a reason, a basis for it, which I'll be happy to discuss.
Excellent. So I've got plenty of this written down now. So we've got the drone panic. I didn't even think of that. I'm glad you mentioned that. We've got the drone panic, the final experiment for Luigi, and predictions for next year and beyond. So much to talk about. Before we get to any of that, I've been watching some of your streams lately, quite a lot of them actually. I've got a lot of clips. As you know, I've been doing these JLB clip shows, which I'm very happy about. And I've been using lots of clips from your streams. And you've been getting a lot more live viewers than you were even 6 months ago. So what's going on there? You seem to have doubled, maybe even tripled your live viewer count. What's the deal?
The deal is I woke up in the middle of the night a couple of months ago with this notion that I could email YouTube and politely ask for them to restore my original channel from 2018 that had almost 8,000 subs, my first channel. And I put in my appeal that I was sorry for the misinformation and I wouldn't do it again. I didn't expect to get any kind of a response. And I went through all my old channels. And I woke up the next day after going back to bed, and YouTube, one by one, was saying yes or no as to whether or not they would reinstate them. And they reinstated my first channel. And that channel and one of the replacement ones between them had several thousand people who were just out of the loop, who hadn't heard from me in years and thought that I quit. So I think part of the reason for our growth is that I have reached back into the past and I've notified people that we're still doing this.
Well, I'm glad to see it. I've got this theory. It's not just my theory. In fact, I'm a latecomer to this theory that a lot of us, our YouTube subscribers, are not being notified when we upload a new video. And for the longest time, I didn't want to. I don't like those people who complain about YouTube or, oh, they're censoring me. I don't generally like those people. However, it does seem to me, based on my stats, that's what's happened with my channel. I've got 5,000 subscribers on there, and unless I promote a new upload elsewhere, say on Reddit or somewhere, most of my videos only get a couple hundred views. If I promote them elsewhere, they get thousands of views. But just relying on the YouTube subscription feed no longer works. So 5 years ago, you upload a video, and suppose you've got a couple thousand subs. Maybe half of those people will click on the video. It seems to me that's now down to maybe 10% or so. There's been a huge change from what I can tell, and I'm not one of those people who complains about the algorithms, Tim, but it seems to me that there are some of us, for whatever reason, our channels have been blacklisted, or... Do you know what I'm trying to say here? Do you know what I'm trying to communicate to you right now? It does seem like it's happening, Tim.
Experience something, I think I can even back that up because I was using text alerts and I would get a lot more people showing up than if I merely relied on YouTube. So I don't trust them. I think it's rational to think that they might play dirty. So what I do is I send out live stream notifications on 2 different platforms. I no longer do the text alerts because it was kind of expensive. But I found that people respond to their text alerts, but they're not getting their alerts from YouTube for some reason. Is it targeted? I don't know, but it seems like it to me. It does seem like there was some heavy effort back, likely after 2018, after the Netflix video. YouTube did make some overt efforts to suppress this specific corner of the internet, these types of discussions.
Well, I'm glad to see, like I said, that your live stream views are going up into the hundreds. And the Infinite Plane Society, you are the president of the Infinite Plane Society. This is a very big time of the year for you because we saw this final experiment down there in Antarctica. So let me get to that right now. Before Will Duffy and his friends went down to Antarctica, what were you expecting to happen? And now that the whole so-called experiment has happened, how do you reflect on this final experiment with Will Duffy, Jaredism, and these other individuals? Give us your thoughts.
Okay, well, the Infinite Plane Society from the very beginning was titled such to be an alternative to the Flat Earth Society because we were talking about cosmology primarily. But my issue with the Flat Earth Society was that they said we're on a pizza dish with a dome floating up through space, but nobody bothered to test it. And then we have this new Flat Earth movement come in, and they say, oh, that's misinformation. The pizza disc Earth, that's ridiculous. But we believe that it's a pizza disc with a dome on top. And I'm like, what's the difference? Like, there's no real difference. They're both closed models that don't have any more investigation to contradict the model they reject. So I'm all for rejecting the globe model as presented if you don't trust the source. And then, of course, you have to test your alternative. Yet, because of what it is, we don't have information to provide an alternative. And I said it's too early to settle on a model. We need more information. So this channel's on record. Even that New Yorker piece, Looking for Life on Flat Earth, mentions Infinite Plane Society and Mad Mike, because we collaborated with this notion that we could have an independent person go high enough to see if there's a curve. And then we also got behind another group that had planned expeditions for Antarctica before the lockdowns. The timing of the lockdowns actually stopped that. So from the beginning, this channel was set on the notion that we don't trust what we're being told, but we're not going to be forced into a secondary model without vetting it first. So we've always been agnostic and skeptical. We're not fence squatting, but we're specifically remaining agnostic about it. So when it comes to the final experiment, I thought, okay, this should have happened 8 years ago. Why didn't it? And I was very critical of the flat earth movement, specifically the Bible flat earthers, because they focused more on conferences and building echo chambers of believers than in getting behind what IPS was about. They didn't want to support our explorer. They didn't want to support our rocket man. They wanted to hold conferences. And I started calling them conference earthers. And it looked to me like they were just going to run it into the ground. All that energy, all these debates, all these people who are engaged would get behind an expedition. But no, they squandered it.
Well, I've got to give you credit because I only found out about this final experiment because I heard you on a stream talking about Jake the Flat Earth Arsehole, right? I heard you talking about him on one of your streams. So I went and downloaded a couple of his episodes because for whatever reason, I just never got into his work all those years ago. And this is months ago, bro. And he was talking about this Will Duffy guy and this Antarctica thing, and I hadn't heard anything about it. So when I got home, I was listening to the podcast. When I got home, I looked into it. Oh, there's this final experiment. There's this there's this guy who wants to go to Antarctica. He's saying that he's got this company who can take you to Antarctica, and he's going to do it. So that is how disconnected I've been from Flat Earth, that I didn't even know about this until I heard about it from Jake, and I was listening to him because of you. That's how disconnected I was. But as soon as I found out about this, man, I was so excited because as far as I was concerned, this was going to be either evidence that the ball model is terrible, which is bad news for me because I've been subscribing to the ball model for years now. Bad news for me, but I can handle it. Or it's going to be bad news for the flat earthers who've been saying for 8 years now that there is no midnight sun in Antarctica, and that is proof of flat earth. That's what they were saying, Tim. That's my memory, because they're trying to memory hole this now. They're trying to gaslight their own audiences. Oh, that wasn't our argument. We didn't say that. We didn't believe it. It doesn't matter. That's not how I remember it, Tim. My memory is that they were saying there's no midnight sun in Antarctica, and that was a flat earth proof. So tell me, Tim, have I been mandoozled? Has my memory... Am I in a different reality now? Have things changed? Tell me what happened.
You're right. The flat earthers were trying to mandoozle you because they were all... I guess their explanation was this. Their explanation was you can't even go there. You can't go there because of the treaty. You can't go there because you'll be shot. I watched Alex Jones, in good faith, offer to send Eddie Bravo to Antarctica, to the ice wall, and he said, no, you can't go. The Navy will stop you. I watched Tim Pool offer to send Alex Stein. Alex Stein said, no, I don't want to go. They'll shoot me. So they've been dodging this for a long time, and it's intellectually dishonest to dodge it when you're offered a trip to get more information to test your model, but to say, I'm not going to go because the reasons are ridiculous. And I only heard about this because the Twitter sphere was abuzz with it, and they were trying to get volunteers, and I was volunteering. I was volunteering because at first Jaron said no, and deep inside the rabbit hole said he wouldn't go because they would dangle a, quote, sun simulator from a helicopter and fly circles around him. And I thought, this is the guy who owns the Flat Earth app. He has the most to lose if his model is falsified. So I can understand why he would dodge it, but I couldn't understand why anybody else would say no. So I volunteered, but they never got back to me. And apparently they managed to convince them to go, thankfully. Or maybe not, because the people they sent are not considered credible by the Flat Earth community. It's a conundrum now.
Well, that's interesting, because one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, hypothetically, if you were offered the ticket to Antarctica, would you go? And you're saying that you volunteered.
Oh, yes. And moreover, if they continually reject this information because they don't consider the source to be objective or it's biased, and you could make that case. And I don't think this is the case, but McToon did have a financial incentive for confirming the ball because he put bets on BetMoose. So you could say this wasn't specifically a scientific observation, but if you're going to say that and you're going to reject their evidence, the burden would be on you to go check yourself. So I would be willing to go to Antarctica on behalf of the people who don't trust Jaron, who don't trust Whitsitt, and don't trust McToon. I would still offer to do that.
Okay, you know way more about this than I do. I didn't know anything about this McToon putting bets on BetMoose. So I'm guessing BetMoose is some kind of betting website, right?
Right.
And they were taking bets on what? What were they taking bets on?
They were trying to bet that they would be right, and they were also making the point that no flat earthers would put their money on their own model. And sadly, he was vindicated. Last I checked on his BetMoose, I don't think many flat earthers actually put money down on it. But when you're talking about science in general and observations, you have to assume compassionate and objective. And they sent a lot of biased people on both sides. So it kind of falls outside of being scientifically pure. And on those grounds, you could be forgiven for rejecting it. And I am not in favor of reality denialism. I don't think you can reject something if you're going to just dismiss it because it conflicts with what you want things to be. And this is where we're kind of at right now. Some people are trying to account for how do we explain it. Others are saying there's a different model that explains it. Eric Dubé just said on his video that he thinks that there's some kind of optical effect where there's the real sun and then there's the, quote, apparent sun. And that the apparent sun appears to make a 360 24-hour sun phenomenon in Antarctica in their winter. So they're working on it.
Okay, I want to come back to this BetMoose thing. I didn't know about this because I don't mind the occasional punt. And if I knew that you could put bets on whether or not there'd be a midnight sun or whether or not you could go to Antarctica, I might have been able to make some money because my prediction was they would be able to go, there would be a midnight Antarctic sun. It's that straightforward. And of course, that is what eventually happened. Although I will say, I was still open-minded to the possibility this was all a complete hoax, like maybe a 1 or 2% chance. It's hard to quantify, but I was still open to the possibility that you couldn't go to Antarctica, this whole thing was a ruse, these people are actors or whatever, or if they did get there, there'd be no midnight sun. I thought the chances were very small chance, but I was still open to it, Tim. And I'd thought through this. I'd spent some time game planning. What happens if there's no midnight sun? Because that means that the ball Earth model that I've been talking about for years now, that ball model can't work with a lack of a midnight sun down there, right? So I was thinking, what am I going to do? And I came up with this conclusion. This is going to be great. I can spend 2025 getting back into the Ball Earth Skeptic round table. So I can see a silver lining to this. Like, it sucks to be wrong, right? It'd be egg on my face. But I can see the benefits of it. It didn't turn out that way. There was a midnight Antarctic sun. And on the other side, Tim, I want your opinion on this. On the other side, how many of these people who've been pushing... Okay, Jaron says that he's changed his mind. Okay, that's one thing. From what you've observed, how many of the other flat earthers have said, okay, we said there was no midnight sun. Turns out there is one. This is bad for flat earth. We change our mind. Apart from Jaron, have any of them done that?
No. I listened to Eric Dubé. I listened to Russian vids, and the typical response is they faked it. And this is a nuanced discussion for me because to say something's fake, you have to have a rational basis. You can't just argue that it's fake from incredulity. There has to be some substance. And I see people who are not even experts in animation or CGI who are looking at it and saying, oh, this is a chroma key, this is evidence of fakery. But I am interested in the question, is it fakeable? And can we rule it out? So, there is something to that. If you look into The Mandalorian, LED screens, creating entire environments. Like if they want to fake a moon base, they can. If they want to fake a Mars base, they can. Why couldn't they fake an Antarctic base? The difference, though, is that a moon base and a Mars base would be closed movie sets. Could you argue that what we call Antarctica is a closed movie set? I don't know if you could make that. Like, in other words, could anybody go there and observe this? And the answer is apparently yes, if you have the money.
Well, to be fair, I didn't know that until Will Duffy came along. I didn't know that you could just pay $30,000, whatever it is, and take a tour to Antarctica. I didn't realize it was, I mean, that's not easy to get the money, but the process seems fairly straightforward. I didn't know it was that easy to get to Antarctica. And I will say another thing too. Did you hear that video that some guy, to give credit to the Flat Earthers where it's due, one of them made this funny song. In fact, I'm going to insert this in post. Did you hear that song, Where's the Guns, Nathan? Someone made an AI video taking the piss out of McToon. Where's the Guns, Nathan? Have you heard this one?
No, I would like to hear it though, because that's a funny question. Where's the guns? I can't wait.
Someone they used AI to, because you know McToon lost it. Like he started yelling at Nathan on the phone. It was very bizarre stuff. Like I'm not on Nathan's side, I'm not on the Flat Earther's side, but I can see humour where it's there. And this McToon guy loses the plot. I'm not sure exactly why. I mean, he proved what he said he would prove. Like you'd think he'd be happy, right? You're a ball earther, you've gone to Antarctica, you've shown the midnight sun, you've completely destroyed the Flat Earthers in their stupid positions. Shouldn't you be happy? This guy seemed mad about the whole thing. It was strange. And one of the Flat Earthers took a clip of him saying, "Where's the guns? Where's the guns, Nathan?" And they turned it into an AI song. So this is Where's the Guns, Nathan by Mr. Cheswick. Link to this song in the comment section below. Take a listen to this.
The sun is shining, he's alone, raging into his iPhone, screaming at the top of his lungs as a 24-hour sun. Oh, how we laughed in this flat land, such a comical sight, to see the tune, the globe-head goose spewing out his shite. Shouting! Where's the guns, Nathan? You promised that I see. I'm all alone here raging. Everyone loves I blame. Oh, where's the guns, Nathan? In this Antarctica abyss. Not come all this distance just for you to take the piss.
Right, so that was Where's the Guns, Nathan? And while we were in the break there, you checked it out. That's the first time you've seen Where's the Guns, Nathan?
Yeah, first time. And I watched that moment. I watched that meltdown, the moment of triumph where McToon is upside down, yelling at Nathan on the phone. And I caught the other end of it. Nathan Oakley is undeterred by any of this.
Well, we'll get to Nathan Oakley in a moment, but first, when I saw this song, I saw it shown on Nathan Oakley's stream a couple of days ago. This reminds me of how Flat Earth was back in 2015 when it was fun. Before it turned into a cult and all of these people, like their identity becomes that they're a Flat Earther and they become very defensive of it. And then the Ball Earthers got involved and all this so-called debates and the whole thing became a schmozzle. Back in 2015 it was fun. And that song, whoever it's by, obviously by a Flat Earther, that to me is very clever and very witty. And I wish things were still like that. That's a rare example of actual humour and wit in the Flat Earth. Back in 2015, Tim, it was a more fun place to be.
Yeah, it was fun until the media turned it into a thought crime. And then it became a lot of personal attacks. I mean, there are some moments, some highlight moments that I think were genuinely fun. At least on our end, we had some interesting, fun things happening. We were gathering a community of people who were far outside of mainstream, and we kind of, I think, you create this subculture based around it, and a lot of it was kind of positive and funny. We did a lot of animations. Memes were our thing, and for a lot of people, they didn't get into memeing until this. They didn't get into these like group collaborations, and I do recall. I think that it was a lot more fun back when it was easy to get into these conversations. You had Google Hangouts. YouTube wasn't a no-go zone for free thinkers and just off-the-wall discourse. But they destroyed a good thing.
Well, to whoever made that song, if you hear this, I just want to say credit to you. You might hate me because I don't believe in the flat earth and whatever, but credit where it's due. That was a very funny clip. Now, getting back to Nathan Oakley, I popped into his debate, his so-called flat earth debates, the day after this Antarctica thing had happened, and I wanted to see what's going on with these people, yeah? And so I popped in and I asked them on the flat earth debates. I got into their Discord server and the moderators approved me and I jumped into the live stream. And my question for them was, did you guys predict 6 months ago, before Will Duffy came along, if someone had said to you, oh, there's a expedition to Antarctica, do you think they'll see a midnight sun or no? What would your prediction have been? So that's a very straightforward question. I'm not asking is the Earth a ball or is it flat? I'm just saying, what would you have predicted? In Antarctica, had this happened 6 months ago, what would you have guessed? Because in my memory, they were saying there's no midnight Antarctic sun. But they didn't answer. Tim, I didn't give you an answer to that, but I've got some good news for you. And for all the flat earthers who might be listening, I now understand what's going on here. You see, if P equals Q, a man eats a pizza and is full, a rooster crows at the sun, therefore you see that the midnight Antarctic sun doesn't matter, Tim. Okay? They explained this to me. It took them 2 hours. We went over it many times. I kept saying to them, yeah, but what about the midnight Antarctic sun? And they said, no, John, you have to listen. If P then Q, and man eats a pizza, and rooster crows at the sun, there you go. So that's pretty much case closed, Tim. What do you have to say to that?
It sounds like a rhetorical strategy instead of a logical strategy. And that's what I get from Oakley, is a lot of rhetoric and rhetorical as opposed to logical, where it can sound persuasive. You can get people nodding their heads, especially if they have a preconceived bias, a notion and a bias that they want to stick to. But it doesn't hold up to logic. And one of the problems here is that it has to do with just the simple fact of a light source and a surface. And can a single light source accomplish both of these things? And we're talking about a light source that would necessarily have to be hitting a sphere in order to hit this side and that side in the same way. I mean, it's basic geometry, is that you can't argue against geometry. And if what you're shown breaks your model, then you have to move on and or rather get more information, and also make whatever concessions have to be made if there are any. You can't deny facts.
Well, this is where I give you credit. So when you first got into all of this all those years ago, we're talking like, 2016? You're the dude who got the Billboard, what was it, Research Flat Earth? And that's pretty much, from my memory, a big part of how you built up your channel was this exploration of Flat Earth. I think you went to one of the Flat Earth conferences, didn't you? And then somebody was kind of sent to mind you. We can talk about that later if you want, but that's my memory from talking about it all those years ago. So you were into the Flat Earth, and yet here we are. You've accepted that if there is a midnight sun, that this fits the ball model. It doesn't fit the Flat Earth. You've been able to adapt your viewpoints to the evidence. It seems to me that not many people can do that. So my first question for you on this, how has your audience reacted to this? As you have adapted your viewpoints to the evidence, what has been the audience response?
Yeah, that's a good question. And first of all, Research Flat Earth was chosen over what other people wanted. Some people said Earth is flat, or the Bible says flat Earth, and I said no. We have to go with Research Flat Earth because the flat Earth question is valid. The question of what do we live on is valid if we have falsified the evidence from the main source that would dispute that. We're talking about NASA. So Research Flat Earth was always meant to maintain that this needs more information. And so I've always been against the model first. But as far as what this does, is this destroys the single sun AE concept. And as of right now, I haven't seen anything that convincingly explains how one sun could do both. Now they're doing sunspot analysis, I guess, to ensure that you have to rule out there being a secondary sun. But does this mean 25,000 mile circumference globe spinning around, as they say, through space, and does it verify heliocentrism as presented? That's an interesting question. I'm suspending judgment on the full import of it because I have no evidence for space travel. I don't even think that low Earth orbit exists. So that presupposes an orb. And then moreover, just because it's a ball, do we have to make other concessions about things such as moon landings or even the physics of space travel? And so it actually doesn't answer any questions for me. All it does is it shines a light on the falseness of the flat Earth model as presented by pretty much everybody and accepted. So it also, I think, it underscores the fact that you are premature to try to produce a model alternative to the globe until you've done additional exploration. And it's kind of a sad testament to the anti-science attitudes that nobody has gone there yet. Because from the beginning, the flat Earth movement has been anti-science. And I've said, no, science will reveal the truth one way or the other. And if we're saying that they're lying, we're not attacking science. We're saying that somebody is augmenting science with propaganda and special effects, with lies, in other words. So we're trying to see through the lies. We're not trying to construct a perfect replacement for the model until we get more information. So this doesn't answer any questions for me, and I don't make any real concessions here at this point. But I'm not going to say that I trust the sources. I have to remain skeptical, but I'm also not going to deny that they actually made the trip, because I have any to suggest that they did. So I'm not going to deny anything like that without further investigating it. I mean, I find it preposterous that McToon would secretly be a flat earther working for the Globe site to hide this fact. Like, that to me is a stretch in and of itself. But again, what does this do? Does it make me believe in outer space? Well, no. So the world could very well be a ball. Does this lead me to geocentrism over heliocentrism? I don't think that's the case. However, if the Earth is ruled to be a ball just based off this, it doesn't answer any of the questions. So I'm still like, I'm incomplete.
Well, we've got heaps of other topics to talk about, so we can't spend too much time on this, but just a couple more questions for you on this. So what do you think about this idea that the map is not the terrain, even if the best model for what we can observe and experience, such as the flights, the apparent rotation of the stars in different parts of the world, and the sun, if all of these things can be modeled by a ball, okay, that doesn't mean we literally live on a ball. And the example I give people is, suppose I come to your city and I am staying near wherever you live, and I say to you, where's the best cafe? And you draw me a map. You get a pen and paper and you say, okay, go down this street, you'll see McDonald's, go right. Walk a few hundred meters down there, and then on the left, you'll see this big shopping mall, go in there and there's coffee roasters, right? Now, suppose I take your map and I follow it and it works. Okay, that's a model that works. It doesn't mean that you live on a piece of paper or that I live on a piece of paper. The map is not the terrain. And so it is with what we see in the sky. So it is with the flights. They fit a ball model very well. They don't fit any flat earth map or so-called model at all. Okay, so the best model is a ball. That doesn't mean I think we literally live on a ball. You could make that inference if you want. It's just that the best model is a ball. And I've been trying to explain this to people for 7 years now, I think. And still a lot of people can't understand that the map is not the terrain. So when I put it to you like that, Tim, do you get what I'm trying to convey? What do you think of this idea that the map is not the terrain, even if the best model is a ball, which it is to me, very clearly, doesn't mean I think we literally live on a ball. That's a separate question. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And technically, science should agree with that. In other words, assuming that the scientists are being honest and there's no lies involved, this would be the best explanation. You would have to say, yeah, this is the best possible explanation, but more information could actually change this whole thing fundamentally. So I think you have to be somewhat open-ended. I think what the Globe defenders think is that there's reality denialism and that they're promoting irrefutable facts. But if you include the fakeness inherent in all media, we can't say we have enough information to conclude a model. That's my big thing. I don't believe the picture they've shown us of the Earth is it. I don't think we have enough information, and there could be other explanations that we haven't considered yet. So I'm remaining open. In other words, I'm suspending judgment. I'm a shape agnostic, and if anybody has a problem with that, they don't understand science.
That seems fair enough. So I've got way more questions for you about all this. This is such an exciting time to be involved in this question of the so-called shape of the Earth. In the second part of the call, we'll come back and talk about Will Duffy, who I had the pleasure of interviewing for a Bonversation a couple of months ago. I want your opinions on Will Duffy. I want your opinions on this Antarctica trip. You say that you're not going to deny it. That's fair enough. But there are some questions about this trip and whether some of it might have been faked. So we'll come back and talk about that. And also David Weiss, who was a co-panelist on the Ball Earth Skeptic Roundtable, the first ever show that was interviewing flat earthers on a regular basis every week. This was the middle of 2015. I was a host of the show. David Weiss was one of the co-panelists on every episode. He was a big part of it. And now I see him on the Alex Jones show with Eddie Bravo. And now he's saying that maybe they're dangling a sun from a helicopter. This is very bizarre stuff, so I want your opinions on all of that. But we need to move on to the next topic. You brought up this drone panic. Now, this is one of those topics I haven't followed too closely. But this has been all over the conspiracy forums and subreddits and social media. I'm on the other side of the world. I'm nowhere near America, certainly nowhere near New Jersey. I know that you're not anywhere in New Jersey as well. You're in, Albuquerque, New Mexico. But you are in America. You're following this closely. What is going on with the drones?
At the very beginning, there were stories about drones, anomalous drones, unknown drones in Jersey. And I saw that this was something spreading on Twitter. And then I saw it being picked up by influencers. And I'm immediately skeptical of it because the standards of evidence on X for any phenomenon are low. For example, motorcyclists going to Greeley, Colorado for a motorcycle convention were reported to be Hell's Angels doing battle with gangs in Colorado. Now, That spread by rumor alone. We had the rumors of cats being eaten by Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
Internet rumor. So I was immediately suspicious of it. And what's more, beyond just being suspicious about these claims, I'm not even willing to say that something was there and that it sparked a panic. I'm saying there's no evidence for it. And the more I observe, the more I realize, yeah, people are just spreading this rumor. And along comes Mick West, who starts doing date, time, location, metadata on the photo analysis, and he was able to rule out all of the major drone sightings and rule in the fact that these were in fact airplanes, identifiable airplanes, misidentified as drones. So the fact of it is, it was legitimately a panic. And this panic was aided and abetted by politicians and celebrities and influencers. You even had Russell Brand, who's a pretty bright guy. Russell Brand, his jaw is hitting the ground, he's saying, because he's looking at this orb in the sky. Well, that orb was reported by ABC News as something they'd never seen before. The orb was Venus. How did Venus get conflated with the UFO, put on the news, debunked, and then it gets brought back a couple days later by a major influencer like Russell Brand, and out of his millions of followers, nobody called it Venus. They all thought it was a, quote, orb. So it's a panic, is what I'm saying.
Okay, so do you think there were any lights in the sky? So there's reports that people are seeing lights in the sky, and then people think those lights are drones, and then some people think those drones are from the government, or they're from China, or they're from Russia, or God knows what. Then some people add another story to that. They're searching for nuclear material. So there's all these stories that get added to it. But let's go back to the beginning. Do you think there were any anomalous lights in the sky?
No, I don't. And that's what really made this thing stand out to me, is that I don't think there's even a rational basis for it. And I'm looking at who spread this. I'm looking at people like, for example, Laura Loomer, close to Trump, very popular. And she says, this needs to stop now. And there's these 3 lights over LaGuardia Airport. And those were identified as 3 airplanes landing. So there's something purposeful about it. Just like in Springfield, Ohio, there wasn't a wave of Haitian immigrants eating dogs and cats.
They're eating the pets.
Never happened. There were no Hell's Angels fighting Venezuelan gangs for control over apartments in Colorado. This is a whole other area of psyops. I call these rumor psyops, where they don't even have to do the work of producing tangible evidence. They just let people make it up. They just let people go wild with it. And then it's incentivized. So if you can provide what appears to be a TikTok video of a drone, and in many instances, these things are debunked before these people re-upload them. You put them on Twitter, you have 1 million followers, there's a payday. So there's an incentive to promote clickbait sensationalism on X. There's an incentive to lie, essentially. So the thing just spread itself.
Okay, let me see if I've got you properly here. So you think by regular people, I mean people who are not being paid by the government or by the military directly, just regular people with Twitter accounts or TikToks. They've caught on to this craze and they've faked or doctored videos with the lights to get clicks, to get likes, to get advertising revenue. Like, you think there are people, how do I put this? Regular people, they're not the government, not the military, but they just want to cash in on the fad, the craze. Is that what you're trying to suggest?
Okay, so you have those, the grifters, and then you have the politicians, like Donald Trump said, I'm not going to Bedminster because drones. And the political incentive to hyping up the drone threat is it makes Biden look bad, like Biden's doing something dirty. So you have that. Then you have regular people. For example, I have a brother who says, oh, the drones are UFOs. And then my mother's like, well, what do you think the drones are? And I'm like, there aren't any drones. You're responding to it because you accepted the faulty premise. And they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's aliens. So I realize there are believers, people who want to believe. And then you have the regular people who just tacitly accept it. And then you have the politicians. And then you have Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan said, I wasn't worried about the drones until I saw the drones here over DC. And those were identified as airplanes. So this is being spread by influencers as well. So then there's one more element to it. Trump was at this Navy game and Palantir had this big drone ad. So part of me really thinks that not only was this a panic with no real substance, but it was deliberately force memed out there. Like this was a psyop. Fox News did stories saying we need to do something about these drones. So there's some self-conscious deception here on behalf of these big platforms that makes me think that perhaps this is an actual psyop in progress.
Well, I did hear in one of your live streams recently that you might think there's some overlap between the drone story and a potential major event in 2025. And I want to make sure that we get that on the first hour of the call, the public part, because this could become very useful to us. I hope it doesn't. I hope nothing happens in 2025 and we're not looking back at this chat as evidence that you called it. I hope that nothing major happens next year. I want a nice, peaceful, quiet 2025 with no major psyops. But if there is a major event, you might be one of the people calling it. So on the other side of this quick break, I want you to tell us what you're predicting for 2025. But first, we have to go to a quick break from some of our sponsors here at Bonversations.com.
I like my burgers zesty fried.
And I like my chicken wraps long and wide.
Throw in some cola, ultra size.
And don't forget a pound of crispy fries.
A family meal for just $29.95.
Support big fast food and you'll feel alive.
Hey, big fast food, do it your way.
So you've got the good news and you have a special little one on the way. You know what you need to do now. Find out if it's a boy or a girl. At Big Radiation Clinics, we have the latest in 4D sonogram technology to let you see every nook and cranny of your bundle of joy. More often than not, you'll even get to see your baby kicking and squirming while we take a peek. It's almost as though they can feel the radiation cooking them in real time. So come on down to Big Radiation Clinics and see the baby today. Here, we see a starving African child. His village has no running water, and food is scarce. With World Vision, you can feed him for just $1 per day. Here we see an independent researcher and content creator living in some little town in Eastern Europe. Times are tough. Now that the pandemic is over and the world has gone back to normal, nobody cares about the truth anymore. He hasn't been able to afford any H or B for months now. You can feed his hedonistic appetite for just US 70 cents per day. Don't let this truth artist starve. Nourish him. Join johnlebon.com today.
I've interviewed a guy who's not experienced 24 hours of daylight in Antarctica. He spent 18 months there.
In reality, however, there is never 24-hour sunlight anywhere in Antarctica at any time of year.
I spoke to a chap who was a plumber on one of the rigs that's out there and spent 18 months there and categorically stated he didn't experience 24-hour sunlight.
Isn't it weird that they faked the 24-hour sun in Antarctica when there should be a 24-hour sun?
We do not have a 24-hour sun in the south.
Similar to like Antarctica. I want to go there and check it out for myself and then I'll decide.
In the flat earth model we say there isn't a 24-hour sun in the south, and there isn't. And there is a 24-hour sun in the north, and there is.
Yeah, so those are our friends over at Big Radiation Clinics. If your wife or girlfriend's pregnant, make sure she goes to Big Radiation Clinics and gets the hell radiated out of that baby. To find out if it's a boy or a girl, very important, tell them that Jono sent you. So we're coming towards the end of the first hour of the call here, Tim, and I want to get this on the record for the first hour, the public hour that is available to everybody on YouTube and Podbean and all the rest of it. This might get hundreds or even thousands of views and listens, and it could be very useful in the future if your predictions come to pass, which I really hope they do not. But who knows what's in store for 2025. So tell us, what is it? You've been watching movies, you've been watching Netflix, you've noticed some patterns, you think there might be some predictive programming going on. What do you think might be in store for 2025?
Well, the thing that Joe Rogan said about the drone, the reason he was concerned is that he found some drone expert, and this drone expert suggested that the drones were out there sniffing for a lost nuclear weapon, that they were detecting radiation with these drones. So that's why Joe Rogan was concerned. He was concerned because it meant that there was a missing nuke. And since the, kind of like, I guess it was right before the Super Bowl, I guess last fall. Since last fall, we've been looking at this storyline of the broken arrow. And it really started with the Artemis mission. So the Artemis, the Archer, twin of Apollo, the Artemis rocket was cracked. Like it had a crack in the shaft. And the Archer, you know, and so this, again, we're talking about last year, but this is a reoccurring theme about this broken arrow. In fact, at the time we were talking about how Artemis and Diana, the goddess, are related, and Princess Diana crashed into the 13th pillar. So we had this reoccurring theme, and it turns out that the code for a missing nuke is the broken arrow. So we've been waiting for this broken arrow ever since it was intimated with that cracked Artemis thing. And the significance again is, one, it's the code for a missing nuke, but two, there's been 32 broken arrow incidents since they designated that the term. So we've been waiting for the 33rd broken arrow. And I was looking at this drone sniffing for radioactive waste, or radiation rather, and then Joe Rogan chiming in, and then they brought up Sum of All Fears, Tom Clancy book that predicted 9/11, but also has something foreshadowing for some kind of domestic attack like this, or terror attack with an errant nuke. So I saw maybe this drone story is to build up the narrative or the fear that it's already here, that something's already about to strike. So as far as predictive programming goes, I would say that this PSYOP could be priming us and preparing us for some kind of invasion, because it suggests that we've already been invaded. And then when Trump says, I can't go to Bedminster because drones, because Biden won't do anything, it suggests that Biden might even be complicit in some kind of an invasion. And this is a huge rumor going around that maybe something is going to happen to disrupt the election, and the drones were the delivery mechanism or somehow part of it.
Well, so what I've done, just to verify what you're saying about the broken arrows 32, if you go to Google, the top result about broken arrows, at least when I tried it, is to a website called atomicarchive.com, and then the / is almanac. I'll put links to this in the show notes below. This is what it says, guys. This is the top Google result. This is not a conspiracy theory website or anything like that. I can only surmise based on the fact that it's the top Google result, atomicarchive.com. It says, since 1950, there have been 32 nuclear weapon accidents known as quote-unquote broken arrows. A broken arrow is defined as an unexpected event involving nuclear weapons that result in the accidental launching, firing, detonating, theft, or loss of the weapon. To date, 6 nuclear weapons have been lost and never... I didn't know that. It says, this is the official story, it says that to date, of those 32, so you're correct about the 32 is what I'm trying to suggest here, but here's another thing. I didn't know the story. This is the official story. 6 of those nuclear weapons were never recovered. I didn't even know that was the official story until just now. Did you know that? There are 6 nuclear weapons on the loose. Goodness gracious me.
I didn't know that, but although something else too, because we're talking about programming in the entertainment media, like foreshadowing. The term predictive is, predictive programming, but media foreshadowing. But there's a movie that came out yesterday, and it was heavily promoted. It's called The Homestead, and it's about Los Angeles getting nuked. And it just came out yesterday. And one of the things that I make a point of doing is treating every #1 trending movie as, if I'm correct in my assessment of how things work, as a likely vector for some significant propaganda messaging that will relate to an incoming news event. I have many examples. The Madness, a series on Netflix, had a lot of predictive value for the Luigi event, which we can talk about later. But the fact that this movie, The Homestead, just dropped also kind of builds into this tension that there's some kind of a nuke, and in this case, Los Angeles.
Well, I'm reading this now on theguardian.com. This is from a 2013 article. Again, listeners, I'll link to this in the show notes below if you want to double check this. And it's important that we get this on the record, because if Tim's predictions are correct, and I really hope they're not, because even if they're, suppose they say there's a nuclear incident, I'm going to auto-hoax it. Probably you're going to auto-hoax it. Probably most of the people listening are not going to actually believe there's a genuine nuclear problem. However, that doesn't really matter. What matters is if the masses believe it. We learned this in 2020 and the subsequent years. So if the TV tells us that there is a suitcase bomb...
Why Albania? Because they have to have something we want. Well, I'm sure they... What do we have that they want? A little freedom? Well, why would they want that? We just found out they have the bomb. We just found out they have the bomb. That's good. No, the bomb's not there because they'd have to have a rocket and that shit, right? And they are a bunch of wogs. No, cross out. All right. So it's a suitcase bomb. I didn't even know I said that. It's a suitcase bomb. You don't need missiles. You can put a bomb in a suitcase, right? Mm-hmm. It's a suitcase bomb. Yeah, that's good. That's a suitcase bomb? Yes? It's a suitcase bomb.
That there is a suitcase bomb. The Albanians have launched a suitcase bomb attack from somewhere in Canada into America. If that's the story, then the world could change the way that we saw in 2020, maybe even worse. So I hope your predictions are wrong. But if they turn out to be correct, Tim, it's important we've got this on the record. You're saying one of the reasons you think this could be happening is because you're waiting for the 33rd broken arrow. And of course, 33 is very significant. No one needs to be reminded of that. Well, The Guardian confirms your story. It says that the Pentagon's official list of broken arrows, mishaps with a nuclear weapon that might threaten the public, mentions 32 accidents. So we've got two different sources telling us that right now we're up to 32, which means the next one, the next broken arrow will be 33. Now, if you were talking to a regular person, Tim, an open-minded person who had never heard of any of these theories before, and they said to you, why is 33 so important? What would you say?
Hegelian dialectic, order out of chaos. It's the motto of the highest level of the Freemasons. And I don't scapegoat the Freemasonic cult as running the world in any way. However, when we look at the symbolism and iconography surrounding these various psyops, there are consistent uses of numerology, numbers, symbols, and colors, archetypes, gods and goddesses. I mean, it's just storytelling. There's always this occult subtext, and these numbers have special significance to these cults. And the number 33 represents this culmination of, I guess you would consider it to be these engineered situations that create a third result. So you have the thesis, antithesis, and then they synthesize it. And that's the chaos they create. They get a response and they install a new order. And so order out of chaos is associated with the number 33 and this idea of a secret group running things. And I happen to think that the number 33, in conjunction with these psyops, is consistent enough to suggest that, well, maybe that's just a calling card. I mean, I don't know for sure, but 33 does seem to be a calling card of those who engineer chaos in order to advance a new order.
Well, you know the whole 311 thing, this idea of looking at Season 3, Episode 11. I got that idea from you. So back in 2020, you had found that Season 3, Episode 11 of Colony, there was this line where the dude says, Seattle's going to be ground zero for the reboot of civilization.
There's a lot of talented people in this colony. Put them together, we could do some real damage.
A war is coming, and our planet is going to be the battlefield. Seattle is going to be ground zero for the reboot of civilization. This is the beginning of the real resistance, the human resistance.
And so you connected that with 311 being when Tedros announced that the coronavirus can be characterized as a pandemic.
We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
So I got this idea from you, connecting TV show Season 3, Episode 11 to March 11, 2020, the beginning of this so-called pandemic, lockdowns, all the rest of it. You know all of this. The listeners know all of this. The thing is, I'm not sure if you're aware that I went and watched a hell of a lot of TV shows. I'm talking Spin City, I'm talking X-Files, I'm talking Seinfeld, Friends, you name it. And if it was popular in the 80s, the 90s, or the 2000s, I probably watched it. And I went to find Season 3, Episode 11 to see what I found. And what I discovered shook me to the depths of my miserable soul. However, my conclusion isn't necessarily that all of these foreshadowings were planned ahead of time by some nefarious group of people who were trying to plant clues. And so in the second hour of this call, I'm going to come back and chat with you about this because I've got this perspective that some people call sync or synchro-mysticism or what have you. You've got the perspective of predictive programming. So I want to enter this first part of the call. Of course, the second part's available to all of your patrons and all the supporters at bonversations.com. They can get access to that. But for the people who can't get access because they don't support your side or they don't support my work, that's cool. Can you explain to them what is your predictive programming thesis and how do you see it in opposition to or in support of or in any way related to sync? I want to give you the floor for the final few minutes of this call. So if I say to you, Tim, I went and watched Season 3, Episode 11 of Friends, X-Files, Spin City, Supernatural, all of these TV shows, and I'll confess not all of them, but in most of them I found illness or bats or certain other motifs that came up time and time again. To me, this is no mere coincidence. There's something going on. But I don't believe it was predictive programming, but maybe you do. Can you tell us what is your predictive programming theory?
Yeah, a great question. And interesting methodology going through these episodes. And I can point out other similar things. Like, it's amazing how many season 4, episode 8 correlates to assassination. Like, I found patterns like this. And in fact, there's a show called The Office, and their episode that aired on 3/11/2010, like 10 years before, and it was like the 119th episode. But again, 3/11/2010, The Office, that episode was about somebody getting a flu virus, and somebody wearing a mask at work, and everybody thought it was weird. So it's like awkwardness around the mask, the flu story. They play that song, Cats in the Cradle, which has a verse about children sick at home. So it's systemic. Predictive programming is systemic. And what we're seeing are patterns that appear to look like synchronicity. And my contention here is that these major psyops, the big ones, are planned years in advance. And what they're doing through programming us, through conditioning us with entertainment, is they're reiterating central themes repeatedly. And I think oftentimes the numbers seem to indicate, if anything, some type of internal code. Like, this is the 3/11 psyop. We got to throw in some sickness themes here. Like, I think it might be some type of internal communication between script writers, and that there's this deliberate synchronization of messaging between the entertainment, video games, and future fake news events. And this is only possible if the future events are fake, because you couldn't put something in the movies and then just hope it happens in the future. But if you're planning on faking something in 5 years, you could build up a lot of content to generate responses to that future event. Case in point, I would contend that Luigi and the response that people have given towards him is largely the result of their conditioning towards the Joker, the feelings they have for the Joker and his kill the rich struggle. So I kind of think that, as far as my examination of media has been, is that we're seeing systemic, structural insertions of propaganda messaging, but that it's deliberately done by those who engineer the future fake news events. But that it appears to be so vast that there's no way man could do it. And that explanation is somewhat coming from a well-justified place of incredulity, because they surely cannot be coincidence. You can rule out coincidence. But the question is, can we rule out man as the cause? And again, I'm saying, I think we can say man is the cause. But that's a point that we can continue to debate upon, but we can agree that we're looking at the same data.
Well, this is where your think tank is so useful, because you guys I can't find all this stuff by myself. I'm just one person. You guys find a lot of things. I didn't know about this until 2 minutes ago when you said it. The Office had an episode, this is the American version, on March 11, 2010. I've just looked this up. It's called St. Patrick's Day, and you are quite right. It was episode number 119, and I'm looking at the synopsis, and I noticed one of the first things it says is that Michael cancels his flights. Now, I don't know about you, but there's a lot of people out there, I'm one of them, where the cancelling of the flights post 3/11 had a dramatic effect on our lives. So here we are, March 11, 2010, 10 years before 3/11, 2020, the episode of The Office, episode number 119, and it begins with somebody cancelling flights. This is what I'm talking about. And this kind of thing happens over and over again. And one of my favourite examples is Seinfeld, season 3, episode 11. Anyone can check this for themselves. Elaine has a new boyfriend. His name is Owen March.
Owen March? I never heard of him.
There's this joke about not this Wednesday, next Wednesday, but this Wednesday is the next Wednesday.
But I'm going down to visit my sister in Virginia next Wednesday for a week, so I can't park it.
This Wednesday?
No, next Wednesday. Week after this Wednesday.
But the Wednesday 2 days from now is the next Wednesday.
If I meant this Wednesday, I said this Wednesday. It's a week after this Wednesday.
So there's this running gag of next Wednesday. Well, the second Wednesday of March 2020 was 3/11. So Elaine's boyfriend is Owen March. There's a joke about next Wednesday. So the second Wednesday. The second Wednesday of March 2020 was 3/11. In this episode, Owen March collapses suddenly. He needs paramedic support.
Oh my God.
Oh, call an ambulance.
Jerry's joke at the end of the episode is about how the only time it's good to have a girlfriend is when you're sick. The only time it's good to be sick is when you have a girlfriend.
I think the best part of a relationship is when you're sick. And the best part of being sick is when you're in a relationship. But if I was to get married, you know, all those vows for richer or for poorer, for better or for worse, all I need is the sickness. That, to me, is the most important one. Do you take this man in sickness? That's the only time I need somebody there. That's the time, go out, have a ball, do whatever you want. But if I get the sniffles, you better be there.
So his joke is all about sickness. So in Season 3, Episode 11 of Seinfeld, which aired back in the early 90s, we're talking like a quarter century before 311, Season 3, Episode 11 of Seinfeld has Owen March, second Wednesday of March. The collapsing, the suddenly collapsing, the jokes about sickness. There's a joke with Kramer and his glove that comes up a couple of times. Well, Tom Hanks, when he posted that he was the first celebrity to get coronavirus, he posted this Instagram shot with a glove. Now, these kinds of things, Tim, if someone says to me they believe that was all planned 25, 30 years ahead of time, I'm like, okay, it seems too much to me to all be planned by humans. So in the second part of this call, I want to come back and talk about that and so many other examples. Plus, we're going to talk about this Luigi thing. So much to talk about with that. And I want to circle back to this flat earth stuff. And some of these characters, more questions need to be asked. So we've got heaps to talk about in the second hour of the call, which people can access at the Infinite Plane Society Patreon. Tell the listeners about this. If they come and join the Patreon, they join your think tank, what else do they get?
Okay, excellent. If they join the think tank, they get live stream notifications in their inbox, so they never miss any live voice chats, live streams, and you also get the archive, the full archive video to your inbox. So you're part of the think tank, you're always given the invites, you're in the know about everything, and anytime I have any kind of events or publications, you're the first to know. And Patreon has multiple levels. You know, I even have like infinite gang for $1. It's just to get your foot in the door so you're always in the know because, as I pointed out at the beginning of the call, we lost contact with thousands of subscribers because they thought I just quit, and we've never quit. So this is one way to stay in no matter what happens in social media.
And full disclosure, folks, I am a patron of the Infinite Plane Society. I have been for several years. So yes, I am here promoting him, and I'm promoting his think tank. You have to know, full disclosure, I am a supporter of their think tank, and I'm glad they exist, and I wish there were more. I wish there wasn't just johnthebond.com and the Infinite Plane Society and Realize Radio and Quantum of Conscience. There's a few people doing good work. There's not enough, and the few that we have, I think we should support them, and I'm a proud supporter of the Infinite Plane Society think tank, even though this fellow here, Tim Osman, has been saying some cheeky things about Sync. You even said that Sync is dead, Tim.
We've given enough time to the synchro mystics.
This is #1 bullshit.
Synchro mysticism is a dead end.
Just send me location.
Let's get ready to rumble!
So I want to come back and pick a bone with you about that in the second hour of the call, which they can access at your IPS think tank. Link to that in the show notes below. They can also access it at bonversations.com, where there are 60 of these bonversations and more being added every week or two, including more with Tim Osman from the past. He's the most return guest that we've had on the Bonversations, and I'm very grateful. So Tim, you get the final thoughts for the first hour of the call, and we'll come back. You and me have some discussing to do about this sync-verse predictive programming business. But to wrap up the first part of the call, Tim, you get the final thoughts.
Yeah, this is a great end-of-the-year talk, and this is a great turning point, the whole flat Earth thing blowing up. And I think we're arriving at a place where those of us who have a more nuanced understanding of news, media, and entertainment can maybe arrive at, if not an agreement on everything, at least a better methodology for processing media now and into the future. And I think we are among those cutting edge who are not going to be triggered by any of the big psyops. So we're going to be the calmest people in the world when or if the big one goes down this year. So I wish there were more think tanks built on the premise of pure skepticism at the level at which we emphasize it. And I'm optimistic about it. And that is my plan for next year, as we can probably get into, is I do think that as what we're doing consolidates, as we're vindicated, I do think we'll see more offshoots and spin-offs and perhaps even organic developments of communities or groups of people who are arriving at the post-truther level of analysis, because trutherism is, in my view, too gate-kept, and it has to be kind of abandoned at this point. We can't rely on alt media. We have to be our own separate entity with our own standards of evidence. So yeah, thanks for having me on. This is the 5th time, and this has been a great talk, and I look forward to the next hour.
The receipt for his McDonald's coffee after tax is 286.
The conspiracy theories are built into these events in advance.
I think these people come from a different world. I think they came through a portal, frankly.
These people are wackos.
This is one coordinated, planned in advance agenda.
The Land of Broken Men is a pub, and everybody's just broken from broken relationships. Everyone had a different story, but it was all the same story, and it was like, oh, my life was great, but then this happened, and then I've been in this pub ever since.
I heard it's a bestseller this year. Seriously, I hear the Book of Enoch all the time now.
Okay, so let me go ahead and jump in here. That's the editing part of Bonversation's episode 61. Recorded 12/21/2024, and the second section is more than an hour. I think it's like 2 hours or something. May have been longer. We were talking for quite a bit. Yeah, that song is Push That by Guy Beats and the Metascriptors. So you want to hear the whole thing, you want to just sign up at johnlebon.com or my Patreon or my IPS site, and you'll get that. In fact, that already went out. The first part you just listened to already should be in your inbox. I'm going to be uploading the second part now, so you can already listen to it on JLB's site. It's going to take me a little while to get it up on my own sites, but I will. And then I'll send out archives for tonight for the first hour, likely separate. But anyway, that's the first hour. Second hour, we go deeper. And actually, we kind of veered into a discussion about magic, magical philosophy, synchronicity, and we're kind of getting into that area like in context, because I think it does matter. I think it is a part, because we're talking about worldview, how we arrive at it, and who creates the dominant worldview, and what their agenda is, and where they're coming from. And so this stuff comes up. And yeah, so all these things will be available to IPS subscribers. If you're members on the IPS site, if somebody just gave you a wrench, you'll be obviously getting that second hour. You'll be getting all the content that you would get if you were signed up on Patreon. So yes, this sounds like an infomercial, somebody said. Yeah, I'm definitely big on promoting other content creators in the parallel media, because there aren't that many. If you are a content creator and you operate on the premise that news should be considered fake until proven real, if you operate on the premise that fake news doesn't get challenged and becomes our history because it's already preordained, then we definitely want to promote what you do. We definitely want to get you included in this parallel media. John LeBon says, I hope you enjoyed the show. Part 2 gets into bizarre topics, magic, rituals, mirrors, candle stuff, not for the faint of heart. Yeah, we definitely went into some different areas, which is great. I mean, it wasn't entirely scripted. We don't have a script. Okay, so tonight we covered quite a lot of things. I covered the subject of how do we make credible claims. You know, let me just go over something really quick here, because this is one of the best examples I can point to of metascriptors. And what I'm pointing out with metascriptors are those who would be involved in the production of propaganda in the form of what has generally been called, quote, predictive programming. So here's a great example. You have Christopher and Jonathan Nolan. From them, you get Batman, you get Oppenheimer, you get Fallout, you get the West World, and these all convey the same general messages as far as the nuke scenario. So let me just start with this. This is from 2012, and pay attention to what Batman says here, because you probably heard this in 2020.
You missed the spot.
If you're working alone, wear a mask.
I'm not afraid to be seen standing up to these guys.
The mask's not for you. It's to protect the people you care about.
So that was a commercial for 2020. If you're alone, wear a mask. If you're driving alone, wear a mask. It's not for you because you're not sick, you're asymptomatic. It's to protect the people you love. But then this is followed by, and watch carefully, after he says that comment about the mask, he hands him what appears to be a COVID ball. It's a spiked ball. And he says, count to 5, then throw. He throws this smoke bomb after counting to 5, and it creates a mushroom cloud. So let me play the rest of this clip with the mask part again. And then you'll see it how it leads to the mushroom cloud. And I'll explain how I extrapolate from this a prediction about next year.
To be seen standing up to these guys.
The mask's not for you. It's to protect the people you care about. Count to 5, then throw.
Okay, so there you go. You have a reference to 2012 and the masks, the COVID ball in the same sentence. Then he says, count to 5 and throw. Well, what happens after 2020? 1, 2, 3, 4, 2025. Then you have the mushroom cloud. The person who directed this directed Oppenheimer, and that came out 2022 or 2023. So what we're looking at here, interestingly, is foreshadowing of the director's future role in presenting us with the new mushroom cloud update. So you have Nolan, long before he made that movie, foreshadowing it in his own film. And moreover, his brother, not the hitman with the codename Oppenheimer, but his brother Jonathan Nolan did Fallout. And what is Fallout about? It's about post-nuke America. So it's very concise here, consistent messaging. And one of my final points that I'll make here is that if we can concede, just as a maybe a conservative estimate, that 33% of our news is fake, that 33% of our history is fake. And I can say this confidently, because if 10% of our news is reinforcing psyops or creating psyops, and then another large percentage, in fact, all the rest of the news bounces off of that, then all of our news is influenced by the fake news events which steer the big agendas. So if we can concede that a large portion of our news is faked, that our history has a lot of fakery in it, and that both of these are being steered by the fakers, then I think it's safe to say that our reality is news bent. And this is a phrase I take from the Newsbenders, a 30-minute play from 1968 about a secretive group called the One World News Service that has a person in every newsroom, and their job is to create the news 5 years in advance. And I'm saying that they do bend our news, and they bend our reality this way. But it's far more than 5 years in advance. It's at least 50. In broad strokes. But then the smaller stories can be, of course, planned more closer to the target date. But in broad strokes, yeah, they are writing our news 50 years in advance. And anytime you see a glitch, anytime you see an inconsistency, a hint that things are fake, you see something in the movies that mirrors what you see on the news, that doesn't mean that reality's glitching. It means the news is glitching. It means you're seeing through the propaganda matrix, not through the matrix itself. And that's where our main disagreement with the synchromystic explanation is. Are we looking at humans? Like, did Christopher and Jonathan Nolan get involved in the PSYOP entertainment complex? And are they knowingly and wittingly producing propaganda imagery, motifs, symbols, narratives, heroes? You know, the Batman, the Joker. Are these individuals behind these movies knowingly producing a form of propaganda where they lay the messages in movies? Or is this being guided by some kind of a higher power, which again is the default explanation because it's so pervasive, but I would argue that its pervasiveness is evidence of its intentionality, of the structural fakery, its systemic fakery. So I have a great deal of confidence in calling things fake for a lot of reasons, and I think it's also healthy. Infinite Plane Radio offers free protection from psychosomatic drone sickness, chemtrail lung, and other paranoias. Daily Mail reported that New Jersey residents were suffering from mysterious illnesses, headaches, and nausea after seeing drones in the sky. If they were skeptics and auto hoaxers and media fakery analysts, they wouldn't have gotten sick because they wouldn't have accepted these things as true. Okay, well, this has been great. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around. We had, I think, a good number for a Sunday. We cleared nearly 200 on the video side and another 50 on the audio side. So over 200 people listening. And then we streamed part 1 of JLB Bonversation, episode 61. I would also check out his site and take a look at his new podcast, The Clips Show. Very interesting and entertaining, a different format. And I think it's going very well. And it's already, I think, 4 episodes in. So thanks, everyone, for the participation in the chat. And we'll continue this later, and a number of people want to go into Discord. I may go in there. We may record. I still have to upload last night's. So thanks again for the support and participation. And again, sign up to get the second part of that conversation, which is much more thorough, much longer, and it goes into some new territory. This is Fepe Akbar by Allergic to Bullshit, featuring Lean Dion.
With your deception, keep it real, that's a profession. Like the whole world is pretending. Found the truth around the penguin. Get a gang on with a blessing. All the other gang are stressing. RPSC on a nesting. Only real ones gonna get this. Fake ones only accept this. They can miss the message. Timbuktu got bodies, yeah. Find them in our records. Auto host a message. Squad are represented. Killing you with knowledge, yeah. The uppers getting deaded. Oh, you're so affected. Cause we're so effective. Let go of your worries, yeah, the whole thing is a sinner. We got it and we get it. Offering refreshment. Level up your conscience, yeah, it's honestly the essence. This wave is uncontainable. Facts are undebatable. You lanes are unrelatable. Give a fuck about saving you. We could keep on playing you. You just keep complaining too. Game is unescapable unless you're with the gang or no. Messing with the penguin. Messing with the penguin, Fepe Akbar. 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 Fucking with the penguins, yeah. With the penguins, I'm coming with a vengeance, trying to make you come to your senses. Forget the general consensus, just pay attention. The room to hell's paid with good intentions. I'm clenching my back wrenching, representing only the most superior independent media. We got that real shit fucking encyclopedia. We're bringing an end to this mass hysteria. They wanna know why it's so serious, cause you must be delirious. If you're still believing stuff, get a grip and show some evidence for your bold claims. We don't play no games, we stay relentless, exposing hoax against quick. The IPS are making an entrance, busting doors down cause now's the time for interventions that I mentioned. We're affecting so many men across the spectrum. We stand out from the crowd, we don't blend in. Steady gaining tremendous momentum. There's nothing close resembling. Check the emblem, it's a penguin, not a gremlin. Just letting you know you're on an infinite plane, it's never bending. We strike like 10 pin, killing all fears and breaking the tension. Gotta know the hopes army, digging deep in the trenches. Come and join in, be adventurous. Quit being so sensitive, forget the censorship. We ain't telling fibs. Messing with the penguin. We're messing with the penguin.